Just a little disclaimer. Just a little disclaimer that we are not Microsoft. Just a reminder, we are not Microsoft. This is all not endorsed, not sponsored, not anyhow, incentivized by Microsoft. I know some of them are watching. We didn't ask permission. This is our experience. This is what we learned from the practical point of view. Not in sales, not in chasing revenue or anything like that. No, with actually protecting the customers, with helping the customers to make sense of all the crap that they get with any licenses. I'm not saying Microsoft, any licenses. This is our copyright. We respect Microsoft copyrights where it's due. This training is copyright some experts. So if you want to use it somehow, want to use parts of it, just let me know. We're not greedy, but please let me know. So we need to go through this copyright process, please. So that's it. And obviously, no liability. If you make a mistake after watching this video, don't come back to us. We'll just say, always consult and comply with Microsoft's official terms and conditions. We'll get to them very quickly, by the way, because this is the thing that I'd like everybody who starts studying Microsoft to get familiar with this ASAP, which is Microsoft Product Terms. But anyway, we're not trying to cover every single element of Microsoft licensing. This is not possible even in 16 hours or even 24 hours that this training will probably take. It's just not possible. It's too much. What we're trying to do, and please let us know if we succeed or not, what we're trying to do is to give you the foundation of understanding of Microsoft licensing and Microsoft license management as well. Some of the hints, where to look up your licenses and stuff like that. What to pay attention to in licensing term, what is not that important. If I'm not mentioning something today in the basics, that is because we think, some experts team, we think that it's not that important to be included in the limited time frame. It's not. We may not even know it because it's not that important. We don't see it in practice. If I highlight something, that means I've seen it so many times, and so many times it was wrong. I just need to. It's my pain. I just need to tell you what not to do and what to do. Hi everybody. Will we get PowerPoints of these sessions? I don't know. So. Thing is, these sessions, the question about PowerPoints is a bit interesting. So these sessions will be left here on the channel recorded, so you can always rewatch it. Why would you need the PowerPoint? So I'm not sure. The PowerPoints are just too heavy. They have lots of too heavy. Anyway, but we'll see. I'm not sure, so can't promise. I'm not going to promise. Do we need to register on Eventbrite for all the 8 classes? No, just one if you want to. Which I just need your email. That's all I need. You can even send it to me on LinkedIn if we're connected. Just say, Alex, don't want to register on Eventbrite. Here's my email. Please invite me to the test. That's it. That's all. Hi, Moni from Nigeria. And sorry, I'm skipping lots of hellos, lots of nice messages. So. Microsoft Product Terms, the last bit on this slide, going back to this slide. So always look it up. Whatever you learn from me, whatever you hear from someone, and I'd like to emphasize this, that Microsoft Product Terms is the Bible of Microsoft licensing. It's the book. It's the place. Microsoft Product, whatever you hear from a reseller may be wrong. Whatever you hear from me, although I've been doing this for 20 plus years, may be wrong. The only right answer is in the Microsoft Product Terms. The only right answer is there. So actually, we can look at that website live now. So this is how it looks, but I have it also open on my screen here in the browser. Don't switch to Product Terms Archive, you stupid computer. Actually, if I just cancel it, yeah, then I can restart it. So Product Terms. This is the website. How you find it? You type in Google or in Bing, Microsoft Product Terms, and you get here. Well, you'll get probably first, it's going to be this page, licensing terms. And then you go here, product terms, just click Product Terms. You come here. So two important things about it. So obviously get familiar, browse it, whatever you learn today, check it there. This is not a training about how to use this website, but I will give you a couple of hints that I give to everybody just to get started with it. Firstly, you if you are researching your own licenses, make sure you know how you bought it through an enterprise agreement, through CSP or anyhow else, and then switch to that. So I just switch to enterprise agreement because terms are different for every type of agreement. Terms are different. There may be similarities, but I encourage you, and I have a slide about it. I encourage you to assume that for every agreement, terms are different. Therefore, something could be available in an enterprise agreement and not available in Microsoft customer agreement. Some things may be licensed differently. Some rights may differ. So you need to choose. That's how they did it this time. You need to choose the licensing program through which you are researching the licenses. If you're just learning about enterprise agreement, learning about Windows, if you're learning about Windows licensing, for instance, check it in all the types of agreements. So then you know the entire picture. And then the other thing, if you want to print it, there's a print button that last time I tried it, it didn't work. But what it does is just downloads the PDF with all these things, and then you can learn them. Before you use print button, you have to choose the agreement type. I'm pointing upwards because that's where my screen with this product terms is and with the presentation. So if you need previous product terms, and why would you need them? Say you bought licenses in 2015 and you haven't upgraded them. You just bought them at that time. You want to check product terms for those licenses because product terms evolve, they change, and they were different in 2015. I assure you, they were very much different. There's an archive. You can click here. Right now, as of now, it's broken. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Microsoft is going to fix it, because if you go to licensing use rights, product terms, archive product terms documents, and go to 2015 when Microsoft renamed product use rights into product terms. Let me scroll it. Product terms. Okay, let's go to 2014. I mean, any previous year. What do we have here? Product lists only. You need both product lists and another document that actually then became product terms. It was called product use rights. I have no idea why it's not there. Maybe I'm clicking something wrong. Maybe I'm not understanding. But this site is visually better than it was before, but it's very illogical. So this is where you find the archived versions of product terms. Just to remind you, so Microsoft and okay. Back to reality, just a bit of like a flash of reality. Whatever trainings you find on licensing, they're going to talk only about current licensing. What we're going to talk in this training about is current plus historic. Why? I mean, every customer I work with has some sort of like SQL Server 2005 running still. SQL Server 2000, NT4 recently. Do you even know what NT4? Were you even born when NT4 was released? I'm not joking. I mean, if you're a student, you probably were born after NT4 was released. So, well. Again, how to register for test. You can check it on my LinkedIn page, but also I'm absolutely sure in the description of this video there must be a registration link. I'm pretty sure it's there. I put it there myself. Yeah, or you can send. Yeah. Thank you, by the way, for chatting with each other and helping each other. So, if you want to research historic licensing, going back to the slide, you need two documents from that period: product use rights and product list. They together were joined into product terms in July 2015. Anything prior, you need both. If you only have one, you don't see the complete picture. There were instances in history when something wasn't stipulated in product list and was product use rights. It was only written in product list. How great is that? It's crazy, isn't it? So both documents, and as I've shown you, the archive is right now broken. I really hope it's going to be reinstated. Another just a warm up statement that I want to give you, an advice is, if you want just to learn purely licensing from the perspective of Microsoft, there's a free resource with trainings, videos, with PDFs, cheat sheets, and immediately tests that you can take as many times as you want, all for free, which is called getlicensingready.com. You're welcome. I'm surprised not many people know about it. I use it myself to catch up with all the changes in licensing, to see how Microsoft sees certain things. And there was the funny story. So I know SPLA. I really know SPLA. I went there. I tried to pass the SPLA test. I failed because the way they asked the questions weren't the way I do this in practice. That was Microsoft's view of how things should be. It still was very eye-opening. It was still very useful. So I looked at that. I learned some things that how Microsoft sees it helps with negotiations. So free thing, don't neglect it. It's a pretty cool website. Then I have a question for you. If you were listening carefully, let's check that. Interact a bit. Are licensing terms the same for all types of agreements? Answer A, all terms are universal. B, basic terms are similar, but there are differences per agreement. I'll give you a few minutes to just to start popping those A's and B's in the chat. Please answer in the chat, A or B. There's a 5-second delay, so I might not see some things. Yeah. The answer is obviously B, the second option. So basic terms are similar, they're similar, but you must remember that there are nuances that may be actually breaking nuances per agreement. One of the breaking nuances, to give you an example, is that in CSP, you're not allowed to virtualize Windows client operating system on premises for remote access, not on local machine, on the server. It's just not allowed. That right doesn't exist. How would you know? You need to check product terms for the CSP program. That's how you know. And the second question is, what documents do you need to learn pre-2015 licensing terms? A, product use rights. B, product list. C, both. I wonder if I can actually now differentiate between B's that you answered to the previous one and the B's and C's and A's for this one. Yeah, so a bit of a spoiler. To learn pre-2015 product terms, you need both. So the correct answer there is C, obviously. Okay, so all the Microsoft licensing training start with what is a license, and I thought, why not? Let's just do a quick intro of what is a license, what license is not. So software, as you probably know, is licensed; it's not sold. You can't buy software. What you do is you pay a fee. It could be a perpetual fee, like a lifelong lease. Think about license as a lease, maybe. The best analogy with real life is lease. Subscription license is more like a gym membership or a temporary lease, not that you pay on a monthly basis. So license is not sold. So software is not sold. License is sold, but license is just a document saying what you can do and what you cannot do. And most often, it just says what you can do. And the approach to that is all the rights that Microsoft grants you, or Oracle, or SAP, or Adobe, all the rights that they grant you must be expressly written. The rule is, if it's not written, it doesn't exist. If it's not written, you don't have the right. Don't infer, don't say, but it's common sense. There's no common sense. Where there's legal involved, there is no common sense. It's the two different worlds. Where it creates issues, by the way, is there are a couple of things I know in Microsoft licensing, which we'll cover in next parts, where Microsoft wrote how to use a software but didn't grant the right to install it in a certain way. So we have to infer that. But in my country of birth, Russia, there's a law, the civil code, that actually states the same thing. Do not infer. If it's not granted, it's not yours. And I had a customer back there that had trouble with authorities that were just asking him, but who let you install Windows in this way? What grants you that right? And he couldn't find it. He asked Microsoft. Microsoft just said, it's not written, but you can do that. But that wasn't enough for that authority. So he was in trouble. So, but anyway, that's the approach to all the IP, basically intellectual property. So, and whatever you get from Microsoft is a license. Online services you pay with your credit card, they're licensed. Even if you pay service fee, there's a license attached to that. There are end-user license terms you must adhere to. There's no way you cannot. Providers, if you rent something from a supply provider, say Amazon, you go and you rent Amazon virtual machines. There's less hassle. You don't really get a license, like full license. You just pay a service fee. You still are bound by the terms of that license on AWS. What you cannot do, and other terms of the service. Right. And if it's free of charge, SQL Express or Visual Studio Community, there's still a license. So especially Visual Studio Community is something that I've just recently made a video on. So Visual Studio Community is not really, it's free of charge, but it's not really free. There are two different things. Read the license, always. We have a question that I'd like to answer. Can we also get a recording for these classes on your YouTube channel? Yes. The same exact link for this live will open the recording when we finish. The same exact link. Nothing special that you need to do. Just stay with us. That's all. Now, an introduction to Microsoft licensing. For those who have no idea about Microsoft licensing, and as you remember, we had almost 40% saying we start completely from zero. Imagine we have a user, and I gave you a name. What was her name? I don't remember. I had it in my Outlook slides. Say, I don't know. She's Shelly. Shelly has a laptop, which is in licensing also called a device or a client device. Why? Because there are also servers, and we'll get to that in a few seconds. So that laptop, that client device. This client device, can you see that? Anyway, I'll put it down. It has an operating system, Windows. We're on the Microsoft world, and it has applications, certain applications installed on that laptop, right? So that's the picture from the end user's point of view. So when it's an online service, Shelly just needs to connect to an online service and consume something from an online service, say Office 365, a good example. What she actually needs is a user subscription. That is the first type of license. That is the most popular right now, like the Microsoft flagship product, user subscription licenses to Microsoft 365 services. This is what I think needs to be as the first thing of which you think. But then in real life organizations, except for smaller companies like mine, I don't have servers. Actually, I do, but it's not a Microsoft Windows server. We consume everything online, like Shelly in this picture. But in the majority of the organizations that you will join or help, or you'll be serving them, they'll be your customers. They'll still be, and I think they'll be there for 5, 10, 15 years in reducing quantities. They'll still be on-premises servers. What it means? What is a server? Quickly, a server is a device that runs server-side software that serves multiple users some certain functionality. They can store files on it. They can send print jobs to it. It's just a device with server software. So what it has is, because it's a server, it has an operating system like the laptop, Windows Server. It may have some sort of a server software. So SharePoint, for those who don't know, is like a web portal, internet portal, in which people collaborate, save files. And by the way, Teams, you probably know Teams. Teams is a majorly, I mean, it's not really, but a big part of Teams is just an interface to SharePoint. just a nicer interface. It's still backed by that SharePoint server. So SharePoint server to function also requires SQL Server, which is a database server. So this is probably like a typical set of something that is legacy software. The organization not yet migrated to Office 365. They have services. They have servers in their data center, in their office. This is what it looks like. So you need to license them all. So you need to license Shelly's software on her laptop, and you also need to license all these server applications somehow. They have different licensing rules. But that's not it. It will be too simple. There's another thing that has no binary code at all. Client access licenses. It's one of the foundational things in the Microsoft licensing. Microsoft, looking at what's going on, may probably get rid of them, but not for the legacy software that will still be running, as I said, for 5, 10, 15 years from now on, even with all the disappearing support cycles. If that helped, that would be ideal for Microsoft. So Shelly also, on this picture, requires client access licenses to all these servers. And in this picture, because I draw lines from the device to the service, you may choose either device cows, and I will explain in more details just in a bit what they are, what they do, or you can assign client access licenses, or CALs. I'll be saying CALs. It's one of the acronyms you can't avoid in the Microsoft licensing world. It's like NAPS and Oracle, same here. So client access licenses may be, as on the previous slide, they may be device licenses, or they may be user licenses. But also you can mix and match them. You can have a device CAL as in this picture, for Windows Server, and user CALs to SQL Server and SharePoint. And why do you choose that? It may be the most cost-effective option for your configuration. That's it. So you have software that you actually license, and in addition to client software and server software, you need to license client access license. Some Microsoft Server software doesn't need CALs. But what I'd like you to remember, that by default, when you don't know yet if there's an exception that allows you not to use a CAL, by default, please think that if there's a server software, please think that the client license is required. There are exceptions from that rule, but that's the general rule: client licenses. And then it's one of my friends calls this non-binary is not the right word. Calls these licenses without code. There's no code behind them. It's just a right. It's just Microsoft allowed you paid Microsoft the money. Microsoft allowed you to access Windows Server. Without that, you may have a perfectly licensed laptop, you may have a perfectly licensed server, but you may not connect from the laptop to the server. You'll be non-compliant. So I promised you to explain the difference between user CALs and device CALs. So CALs are assigned, and if you buy a user CAL, you may not assign it to a device. You need to assign it to a user. What benefits does it give? So user CALs are more popular. I'd like you to first think about user CALs. That's the practical advice. I'd like you to first think about user CALs. So Omer says paper license. It's not necessarily a paper license. So it may be electronic. What is the difference? Explaining. So user CAL, there are two separate price list positions: user CALs and device CALs. User CALs you're supposed to assign to users. Device CALs you're supposed to assign to devices, and not vice versa. You can't take device CALs and assign to users and vice versa. It's not possible. It's not allowed. I mean, you can do that, but it's not allowed. A user CAL allows Shelly, on this picture, she has a CAL, to access the server to which she licensed to access. Say it's Windows Server CAL. As many of those servers in the organization, and even outside of it, with just one CAL, also using unlimited devices. She's a licensed user. All the other interoperations between her devices and her servers are licensed through that client access license. So you don't need, in this picture, you don't need 3 CALs to access 3 servers. You need one user CAL. And then whatever she uses to open something, SharePoint on that server, a laptop, a tablet, a phone, it doesn't really matter. She already has a CAL. Device CALs are the opposite of that. You assign a device CAL to a device, and then any user, without a user CAL, because the device is already licensed to access the server, can come to the device, type something, open something, work with SharePoint. It's already licensed. The device is licensed, and then any user through that device can access the software. Does it make sense? If a license assigned to a user, if a client access license assigned to a user, yes, it means that that user can use any devices to access that software. That's correct. Right. Just to remind you that registration is not necessary. It's only needed to access the test. That's it. So people keep asking how to register. Just to watch this, to learn, you don't need to register. You need to register because I need your email to send you an invitation to the exam. That's it. CALs also, client access licenses. This is something because we're talking about not just licensing, but license management. So CALs also are also sold by Microsoft as bundles. So you may, if you're not new to Microsoft licensing, you may have encountered things like Enterprise CAL Suite or Core CAL Suite or bundle. These are just sets of various CALs. Core CAL is small, Enterprise CAL is bigger. And nowadays, if you license your users with Microsoft 365 Enterprise E3 or E5, those licenses assigned to users give users equivalent of all the CALs except for the SQL Server CAL. So that is called CAL equivalency. So there are some instances when you don't need the CAL because you already have it through some other source. Sometimes you just sit down and think, okay, how many CALs we need? Look at if a user may already be licensed with the CAL equivalent. Where you find them, where you find all the lists of, and I never remember them. I try not to remember them. There's too much information. I go to the Product Terms website that I've shown you, and I look them up there. So yeah, equivalent rights. As I mentioned, they replace or waive the need for the CALs, and Microsoft 365 is a quite a good example. External users. External users are different to internal. What it means, external, they're not your employees. They're not on-premises workers. Nowadays it's difficult to say on-premises. Everybody's working from home due to COVID, but you get the idea. External employees are just not companies' employees. So external users also require licensing their connections to the server. And by default, you need to think they probably require a client access license. And then there are exceptions. So some software has additionally licensable external connectors. They replace CALs. So you buy one external connector, and then any number of users can access the server from the outside. You can't do this for your own employees. You still need CALs for your own employees. But you can channel all the external users through external connectors. You actually normally need many because they provide access to different hardware servers. But this is an exception. So external users can use both either CALs or external connectors. Also, some of the software service that we'll cover when we're discussing service, I think is the fourth or fifth part of the training. So I'll be very meticulously in details talking about those differences between various server licensing models, but we'll cover them as well today at lightweight, high level. So some of the software includes rights for external users to connect without an additional external connector. So it just says it includes external connector. What it means is you just don't need to pay. It includes external connector rights, the license for the server itself. Simple as that. But then again, it's an exception. So please think, by default, think that any user, any device needs some sort of client access license, unless it's permitted not to buy it. Yeah, I unfortunately I have to. So CAL is a client access license, CAL, client access license. I've just covered it a few slides before. So if you want to rewind and then come back. Enterprise CAL accesses a broader range of service, correct. Wait a second. Enterprise Cal. Yeah, this is the comment. Enterprise Cal access broad. Yes, yeah. Enterprise Cal is a bigger bundle than Core Cal. Actually includes Core Cal and additional Cals as well. So one thing that is very, very, very important about the Cal bundles is that Cal bundles never ever have had SQL Server Cal included. SQL Server Cals are always separate. Many companies make that mistake, unfortunately, when they don't read the product terms and they then just buy Cal bundles and then they don't license SQL Server Access, which is a bad thing. What else do we have here? Can you please define what external user is regarding Microsoft product terms? I didn't want to do it because we have limited time, but let me try. It could be good. It could be a good exercise. So, can you please define? I'll look it up. It's not cheating, even. External user. So, if there's something that you want to look up, it should be in the glossary. Actually, there's a glossary. Where's glossary? Glossary. External additive external connect license. Yeah, well, it's a bit too preliminary right now. External user means users that are not employees, on-site contractors, or on-site agents of customer or its affiliates. Let me make it larger so you can see it. Too large? Yeah, there you go. External users means users that are not employees, on-site contractors, or on-site agents of customer or its affiliates. So it's not your employee, on-site contractor, or on-site agent. That's the definition. And by the way, if there's anything you want to look up, what we're talking about, by the way, Cal, this is the definition of Cal. Can you define Cal? Yes. Yeah, there you go. There it is on my screen right now. So just, I encourage you, by the way, open product terms now so you can look up things that we're discussing and maybe even catch my mistakes. I would be grateful, by the way, if you catch any mistakes, because I'm not completely, error-free, unfortunately. Right, we have an advanced question here. If we have Windows Server 2019 standard for the purpose of domain control, do we need to use a CAS license for one of those IT admins, or we need to use a CAS for all employees? They access the functionality of the server. The domain controller, they log into the AD. Yes, you need the CAL. I have no doubts about it. Try and convince me otherwise. Microsoft actually defines external users, as we just seen. Yeah. CAL licenses for lifetime of every product. Okay, good one. This is a fantastic question. I didn't have it. So CAL licenses, client access licenses, also have versions. I can never, because I don't have a slide on that. Client access licenses also have versions. If you run Windows Server 2016, you need CAL that is at least Windows Server CAL 2016. You may use CAL 2019, or if this year they release a new version, there'll be 2021. You may not use Windows Server 2016 with the CAL version 2012 R2, for example. So it must be either the same version or higher. CALs are version. They are not lifetime. I mean, licenses may be perpetual, but if you upgrade your service, and I've seen it many times. So the whole organization is licensed with CAL 2012. And then they upgraded 5 servers to 2016. What that means is then they need to rebuy the entirety of CALs. And they didn't have software assurance, for those of you who know what I'm talking about. I'm going to get to that pretty soon. So what happened is somebody in IT decided, it's a great idea to deploy Windows Server 2016. I mean, I have nothing against it, but they didn't inform their ITAM team. They didn't inform the CIO. And then because I managed their estate, I went to the CIO and said, guys, you need to buy 5,000 new CALs because yours are not applicable anymore. You have hundreds of servers and you only have 5. Even if they had 1 server, of a higher version, all the client access licenses need to be repurchased. Does it make sense? CALs must be with a version that is enough to access the version of the server. Usually, unless there are any interesting exceptional circumstances, you scan the entire network, or you ask your admins, what's the highest version of Windows Server we have? That's the version of the CAL, at least, that you need. Ken, where did you take this from? I'm sorry, I'll put it on screen. Excel is a person who does not have an employee level access to your company network. I would not. I would be a bit skeptical about using any quotes that don't come from Microsoft themselves or even from product terms, because there's a devil in the details. It's very important. So you have to read the official terms. That's not a bad definition, but I would encourage everybody. So if you read something like online guides or even Microsoft like Windows Server licensing guide, recheck with product terms. This is from Microsoft. I wonder what document is that? Some sort of maybe a licensing guide or something, is that? But anyway, good definition. I'm not saying it's bad, but as I said, sometimes the problem with the details. The problem is with the details. So, CAL's external connectors. There are other types of licenses. We're going to cover them, multi-cloud and all the other scenarios like SPLA. We're going to cover them in next sessions. So, but I hope you appreciate the basics. And I have a couple of questions for you. Can users access software without a client access license? Answer A is yes. The answer B is no. CALs are always required. It's a tricky one. Please take a moment to think about it. And I'll have a drink. It's going to be a 3-hour training, so I'm running out of water. If the blurb is not from a mess, well, even if it's from a mess. So whilst you're answering the question on the screen, let me give you a bit of on an insight how this works. This was a wrong button, wasn't it? You can't see me anymore. Like this. Why can't I switch to thumbnails? Yeah, now I have. Right. So whilst you're answering, this is the. I'm gonna miss some of the questions there because people are answering. So sorry for that, but I'm gonna rewatch it anyway. Microsoft may have product terms. Microsoft may have product licensing guides. Microsoft may have internal circulars, just saying, what you need to do, how you need to interpret certain rules. Some terms must be interpreted. The last instance in the Microsoft world is Microsoft Licensing Group. You can't access it yourself if you're not a Microsoft partner. You can't even access it if you're a Microsoft partner. You have to ask your Microsoft account manager so they can internally ask the licensing group to explain a certain topic. So that's the kind of end instance. But then where you fall back is always to product terms. Any guides, they may explain something, but I have seen errors in Microsoft's official guides. I have seen misleading information in Microsoft's official licensing guides, on their website as well. I did a post about 4 months ago, what's wrong with the explanation of Windows Server license stacking. I found only 2 errors. People found 8 errors. 8 errors on one page. So product terms. And by the way, so the answer here is actually yes, because, well, firstly, external users can access a certain service software without CALs. And then, as I said, there may be exceptions. So to reiterate, I'd like you to think that unless you know that it's allowed to not use CAL, I'd like you to think that CAL is probably required. CAL is probably required. Client access license is probably required. How about the users that don't interact directly to but only interact with the server by using applications? Oh, yes, I have an answer to this, which is coming in a few slides. It's a very good questions. Indirect taxes. There's a whole thing about it, and in Microsoft, SAP, Oracle, just preliminating the question. Yes, they are. Yes, they do require. There's another question. So, okay, there are there are shift workers, multiple, 3, 4, 5. Anyway, using one computer. Which car is economically better? Hyperlook, you said Linux. What do you mean by Linux? Multiplexing. Thank you for saying that word. This magic word, multiplexing. It requires cows. Yes, it does. Any limitation to purchase MSK license? Do we need license for file and print sharing session? From a server, yes, not from a desktop. Just think that, if you ask the server software, it requires a CAL. It doesn't really matter what you use. You just use any functionality. Yeah, so here the answer is A on this slide. Obviously, if you have shift workers, it's more economical to assign the device CAL to a device and then let them just, work with that device. Many people, one device, one CAL. Right. My computer makes me worried, to be honest, because it doesn't react to my mouse clicks. Need to check why this is going on. Maybe it's because there are so many comments. Anyway, I hope you can see me. We'll take care of the chat a bit later. So, ways to acquire these licenses, because you need to know them very, very roughly. So this slide, this particular thing, topic about how you acquire licenses, is the topic for the next part, which is 18th of August, this August, this year, in 2 weeks. We're going to be talking about. Thank you for your answers. About agreements. So 90%, it's decreasing right now. But I'm talking about the licenses that have already been acquired. The ones that you have to deal with. They will be bought through so-called volume licensing agreements, which we'll be discussing in the next session. Enterprise agreement, if you ever heard that name, CSP, MPSA, those are all volume these are all volume licensing agreements. So that's the majority of licenses. Other licenses that doesn't come to mind straight away if you're not working in the licensing industry. Other licenses come with computers. So you buy a laptop, Windows 10 is pre-installed there already, or you bought it, many years ago, and there was Windows 7, Windows XP. It was pre-installed on the computer. So this is how you acquire them. Sometimes there are appliances that may have Windows Server pre-installed and which is attached to that computer. So these licenses come with computers. They have different licensing terms. Not to what you get through volume agreements. There's another channel which is often forgotten about, but on SQL Server can save up to 25 SQL Server costs. In certain circumstances, I've seen this recently in my last job. SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server is often bundled with something else, accounting software. Your accountants use some third-party software to manage your payroll. It's a payroll application. It may include SQL Server with it. And it also has different licensing rules. That happens. It's called ISV royalty, ISV bundle. ISV stands for independent software vendor. That just basically means there's a third party independent from Microsoft that supplied you Microsoft license with their software. That's perfectly legal as long as they provide you all the papers with it. And by the way, another acronym that I didn't explain to you. What you buy with computers is called OEM. I'd like you to remember that as well. That's one of the necessary acronyms in our world. It stands for original equipment manufacturer, but you don't need to remember what it stands for. You just need to remember that the license that came with the computer is called OEM, pre-installed OEM, because manufacturer installed it on the computer. Very good comment from Abdul. OEM. You know what? I'll probably answer it later. So the thing that I really liked about this computer is that OEM license expires with the device unless you do certain things. So we'll get to that in the next sessions when we'll stop talking about the basics. Another one is you buy something from service providers. So CSP are licenses. You actually get licenses. So CSP agreement usually provides you with licenses. SPLA is something that SPLA is a mixture of things. So majority of SPLA licenses, which stands for service provider licensing agreements, is you just pay for a service and they rent you out certain Microsoft software, so or virtual machines. Amazon AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, Alibaba Cloud are very good examples of SPLA providers. When you rent a Microsoft Windows Server in all these platforms or any other third-party providers, and you just pay service fee, monthly fee for it, part of that fee is your SPLA license. You don't get a license. They don't give you a license. There's no paper license or electronic license, but that is still a license. It's a SPLA license. CSP stands for Cloud Solution Program. This is the new world where Microsoft is moving. So bear with us until the next training. We'll cover CSP in much more details. Online from Microsoft. That's how I bought some of my Microsoft licenses. I just went online to the Microsoft website and paid with my credit card, the corporate credit card, but I bought it online. So you can do that. And the last way, which is not recommended, don't do that because it's just nonsensical, is you can actually buy some Microsoft software from a store off the shelf. If you're a company, if you're an individual, fine. If you're a company, it creates lots of headaches. You will have them to keep all the collaterals to manage it, to have your proof of entitlement. Just don't. Go with CSP, volume licensing, OEM, sometimes ISV. So terms are different, as I mentioned, depending on on the type of agreement. We already have had a question earlier in the presentation about this. So the way how you acquire the license defines the terms. Defines the terms of the license, defines what you can do. Good example would be downgrade rights. Volume licensing gives you downgrade rights to any version, as long as you have a valid volume license. OEM and retail, you need to check. It's not clear. There's no automatic. There may not be downgrade right. ISV, probably no downgrade rights. So what you bought with the third-party software, if they sold you SQL Server 2017, you may not install SQL Server 2016 under that license. So that's the difference. Another thing is Microsoft licensing always evolves. So terms are different depending not only just on an edition, and we'll touch editions and versions in a few minutes. But also depends on the version. So rules for Windows Server 2016 data center will be obviously different to Windows Server 2019 data center, not only standard. Because as I said, Microsoft licensing evolves. So you have to check whatever license you use, whatever your license you assigned to this server, whatever license you bought for this server, you need to check that exact terms. If you remember from your memory how it was licensed in 2012, it's probably not valid anymore, unless you're talking about licenses from that time period. I hope you understand. So versions and editions. This is something that pains me. Even Google is guilty. When you search for something about software versions, I was looking for Windows Server, Windows 7, Windows 8 editions, and Google just starts popping up, with results saying Windows 7 versions. I'm not looking for versions. I want to see editions. People mix up versions and editions all the time. So think about versions. I think this is my explanation, and I think it's the easiest. But let me know if it's not. Is version tells you when the software was released. Even if it has versions like 6, 7, 8, you still understand that 8 is a later version than 7. That's the time when it was released. That's the version. That is the version, not enterprise or standard. The version is when it was released, the timestamp. Availability date. And editions are those enterprise standard, data center, which control. Editions answer you the two questions. What functionality it supports and how much it costs. That is the size of the package. How old the package is a version. How big the package is an edition. Please don't confuse them. So, and please remember that you need to know both to understand what licensing rules apply. Let me have a look at the questions. OEM software may not be transferred to another machine. So this is something I'd like to check. This is something I'd like to check before the next trainings, because I've never done it myself, but I remember something. So take it with a pinch of salt, really. That if you you have 90 days to acquire software assurance for an OEM license, and then it becomes movable until your SA expires, then you need to reassign it back. It's mind-boggling. I would not encourage anyone to do that, but I think there was an exception like that. So please correct me if I'm wrong. Microsoft is minimum 4 cores. Was it an answer to one of the questions? Okay. Anyway, so rights are different. Then rights are different for the same software, same edition, same version, whether it's virtualized or not. And if you don't know what virtualization is, I'm going to explain it to you in a few slides later in this presentation. So just bear with us, please. Those of you who know what is a virtual machine and what is a physical machine, for the same software, for the same edition, for the same version, licensing assume that by default, probably the rights are different. So see, you have exactly the same product, but where it's deployed, how it's deployed, how it's used, and then suddenly the rules are different. And they may be breaking rules. They may break the entire kind of your idea about IT. Office, is it locally installed or is it remotely accessed? Different rules, just different rules. And other things, like if it's installed in your office or it's installed in a third-party data center, if it's used for production or for development, if it's used by your internal employees or externally, rules are different. So every time, check version, edition, and the product in the context. Look at every single detail. Sorry, I didn't want to swear. If hardware is unusable, can we use the same license for another device? I'll cover it today. There's a thing called license reassignment, but it doesn't apply to OEM licenses. If you bought an OEM license with a piece of hardware and then that hardware became unusable, you throw it away together with the license. So that in that case, license is not movable. They changed it with Windows 2019, OEM in Germany. EU is not bound to the machine anymore. Is that an EU specific thing, Carl? If you can please let me know. I may miss your comments because the comments are scrolling very quickly here. I may miss it. It may have been some sort of just a local EU statement by a court or something like that, decision by an EU court. I would like to know about it because it's quite interesting. It's quite interesting. I'd like to learn about it. Then again, if it's a EU local, we mostly have Indian audience here. It doesn't work in India anyway. So it's a question for you. What edition is a SQL Server 2012? Type your answer in chat. What edition is SQL Server 2012? Like this. EU specific thing. Oh, I love this. Think of OEM license and the partner device is marriage. You can't divorce, but it's like the old school marriage 100 years ago, where when you couldn't divorce until communists introduced divorce. No, I love that. It's about the marriage. Yeah, nice, of course. So, what edition is the SQL Server 2012? It's a tricky question, isn't it? Now, what edition is this particular server? Not what editions there are, but good answers anyway. Very, very good answers. It's a version. There's no edition here. And why I posted it? Why I posted it here is standard. No, it's not. So why I posted it here is I get that lots of times. So I go to an IT and then can't tell the edition. Sorry, I'm trying to click your comments, but they keep scrolling, so I'm not that precise, unfortunately. there's no such thing as no edition. So the edition here is unknown. That's the answer. Unknown. We need to dig deeper. We need to go and check because we don't know what license to assign. It could be SQL Server Express, which is free of charge. It could be SQL Server 2012 Data Center, excuse me, which is so again, I'm sorry, I'm probably overheating. It couldn't be Data Center. So standard enterprise. It could be enterprise, which is very expensive, very expensive. It could be standard, which is kind of midway between free and very expensive, or it could be SQL Server 2012 Developer Edition, which may only be used to develop something. So we need to know, and this is what I get sometimes from sysadmins or from people from IT. I go, what edition is that SQL Server? They come back and say, oh, it's SQL Server 2012. That's not what I asked. I know it's SQL Server 2012. What edition is that? Because I can't manage your licenses if I don't know what edition that is. You must know both version and edition. Zero edition. There's no zero edition. It's either standard or enterprise. Sorry for me saying data center. By the way, who? It's a tricky question, which is not here. But if somebody types it in the chat, kudos if you know that. So, what was the only version of SQL Server that actually had data center edition? Only one version. Okay. So another question. Your IT migrated an application from physical to virtual service. Do you still have enough licenses? Same configuration, same application, nothing else changed. They just virtualized it. Well, about the SQL Server question, this could be cut as well, easily. So that just wasn't enough information on that. Yeah. Obviously, answer here is B, because when you virtualized, you need to go and check if there are different rules that apply to that application or software. Maybe not, but that would be an exception. So it's not A. Even if it's the same configuration, but you moved it from physical to virtual. Again, happens all the time. I come to an organization, I look at the licenses, and I think, guys, you're all heavily virtualized. Why do you have still licenses that are not for the virtualized world? And I said, well, did we have to buy new license? We already bought licenses for the service, but you virtualize them. You need to relicense the whole entire thing because the licensing rules in the virtual world are different to the physical. So yes, you need to check. Moving on. It's going to be a long session, so I'm really sorry for those who won't survive it. But you can always come back and watch it. So CAPEX, OPEX, and license lifetime and other things. So software assurance. I mentioned it. I tried not to mention it before. I tried not to mention it because we have 40% of people who have no idea what Microsoft licensing is. So this is another acronym, SA, or software assurance that you need to learn. You must learn it. It's something without it, you just can't understand Microsoft licensing. What that is it's Microsoft sort of a name for maintenance. Like other vendors, they have like support fees, maintenance fees, other fees. Microsoft's maintenance fee is called software assurance. But it's much more than that. And misunderstanding it, just thinking, it's just maintenance or it's just upgrade rights, may be damaging up to millions and millions and millions of dollars, if not more. So let me explain that. So this is a subscription always. SA is always a subscription. So if by the way, OPEX, it must say OPEX. Let me fix it on this slide. This is a wrong thing. So this is an OPEX. Those of you who know the difference between CAPEX and OPEX, it's a subscription. It's an OPEX, and even if you have I'll get to that. Even if you have a perpetual license, which is CAPEX. SA is always OPEX. You can't capitalize it. I mean, if you want to, if you know the tricks with accounting, that probably you can. But this is a subscription. It's a maintenance fee. But it's not just maintenance. So it adds more rights to the license. It extends the license. Software assurance gives you more what you can do with the license. Since its inception, since when it was introduced back in 2003, software assurance always gave new version rights. During the term new version is released, you can upgrade to it. I have a slide for it. Next slide, by the way. But then since 2012, Microsoft started engaging in an arm twisting exercise. Some of the rights Microsoft was including in the license, in the perpetual license, they said, you know what, from SQL Server 2012, you want SQL Server failover for free. You can't just get it through a license anymore. You have to subscribe to software assurance. We want annuity. We want you constantly paying us. You have to go and buy SA. That's the commercial way of thinking, because they can. Can you blame them? I don't know. I mean, if you want to. I don't. I'm tired of it. So since 2012, it's required for critical rights. Sometimes they may be mission critical, and I'll show you an example where. And then also the other thing which Microsoft were very proud of. So Heather Young, who used to head the software asset management department, and now I don't know if she used to work for Google after that. What she's doing right now, I'm not sure. So Heather used to be offended because she invented almost all these things about software assurance, kind of brought in new benefits. So it wouldn't be just the licensing rights. Software assurance also still includes a few additional rights, like deployment vouchers. Used to be much more, but they're shrinking. It seems like Microsoft is phasing software assurance out because there'll be a completely new licensing paradigm, and the new. It's already, by the way, been introduced. So we'll touch on it when we discuss about agreements. Software assurance, other software assurance benefits are shrinking. So what I'd like you to remember is it's new version rights and additional rights that you need in your infrastructure. In the majority of cases, except for Windows Server, you would should probably consider software assurance. So new version rights explained. So let's say a software assurance term is the time for which you have this subscription. Let's say it's from 2017 to 2020. Let's just say, assume for the purpose of this slide, that you bought renewed software assurance, purchased new software assurance with a license for 3 years. When you bought it, you bought licenses for Visual Studio 2015. During the term until 2020, Microsoft released 2 versions. Visual Studio 2017, which gave you a right to upgrade to 2017. You don't have to. Nobody pushes you to upgrade. But probably if you develop stuff and you like, using new shiny things, you have a right to upgrade during the term of software assurance to a new version. Then they released 2019 still in the term. And then in 2020, software assurance expired, but you still have the right to upgrade to any of these versions. You can't upgrade further because it's expired. So these are new version rights. Does it make sense? I hope it does make sense, because it should be simple. So you bought the license for version 2015, and then during the term of SA, they give you basically, because they released 2 versions, you may upgrade to any of these versions even when your SA expires. When it expires, you're not rolled back to the previous version before you had SA. You are fixed with the one that was in the end. What was this? In case we did not buy SA, can we just? I'll touch on this. And this is a good comment about 90 days. So I'll touch on this too. On the 90 days after purchase, that applies to OEM and transferred licenses. So there are a few circumstances when there's a 90 days exception. It's a pain, software assurance. It's a pain. It's a big, big pain. So those other important user rights that software assurance provides to you. So bear with me if you don't understand it yet. You will, in the end of all the trainings, you will understand this all. Server software in virtual clusters. If it's virtualized and moving around in clusters, you need a SA for license mobility. New term. I'll explain it. Remote access to Office applications may require software assurance. Free SQL Server instances for failover require software assurance. Unlimited SQL Server virtualization requires software assurance. So all these things they may be fundamental in how your IT operates right now. And then non-licensing benefits. So training vouchers have been retired recently, completely, and the deployment vouchers are shrinking, and other benefits are shrinking. So here's a link, and it's just a link to by the way, the same product terms website I've already shown you a couple of times. Same website. Just there's one of the big chapters that is called Software Assurance Benefits. Just read it about there. License lifetime. So we came into this 90 days and whatnot. Perpetual license, which is a capital expenditure, you can capitalize it if you want. It's a perpetual. It's called perpetual for a reason. It never expires. Even when and this is one of my favorite things, even when your product is end of life, even if Microsoft stopped supporting it, they don't release any new patches, they don't support security updates, license never expires. Product is end of life, license is never. So if it's a perpetual license, it's forever yours. It's a lifetime lease. So the second type of license that you may purchase from Microsoft is it's called LSA, License Plus Software Assurance. What it includes is a perpetual license, and then at the same day, you attach to that license a software assurance subscription for a fixed term, for a fixed period of time. That is license plus software assurance. That is how it used to be for many, many years. Now it's all changed into subscriptions. We'll get to them pretty soon. So say obviously expires, and then you renew it. You don't need to repurchase license if you renew it day to day. If you then miss it, then you may still place an order, buy the licenses for software assurance. That's money wasted down the drain. Forget about them. You may still cancel an order like 30 days or something. If you forgot to cancel it, that money is lost. So gaps in the say are not allowed. And if you need, again, a license with the say, you need to repurchase the whole thing again. A new perpetual license and software assurance. And if I were you, I would just go with a subscription. Why would I, in these days, buy perpetual license plus subscription, unless I'm manipulating my financial reports and I want to capitalize the licenses in my P&L, whatever. So about the 90 days, so Carl said that there's a 90 days grace period to buy software for a license. What it means is that certain types of licenses, like OEM, for example, allow you to, so you bought a laptop and then you have 90 days to buy a SAFE for it. As far as I know, as far as my knowledge goes, you can't buy a volume license and then attach a SAFE to it in 90 days. Large corporations may talk to Microsoft about some tweaking of license. Microsoft don't like it. They really don't like it. So you may open this conversation if you're very large and you miss, say renewal by a week, and it's still kind of. I would probably say in the majority of cases that's not going to work. Do you need a PhD to understand Microsoft licensing? I thought I'm making it simple. I'm obviously failing. No, you don't. You just need to listen carefully and read. From where you can identify if it's perpetual or perpetual with a say. So if you have a license register with all the licensing details, with all the product, Microsoft calls them SKUs. Stop keeping units, part numbers, and product names. It'll be in the product name, like full Microsoft, very cryptic name. If it says LICSAPK, let me type it in chat. And it's a license. That's a perpetual license with a say. Did you even get it in chat? I tried. Maybe online. Anyway, so for some reason can't send you messages. Let me switch to this. Yeah, it worked. So that's license. That's license with a say. If it's just license, it's going to say just a license for volume purchases, traditional volume purchases. So you can identify that. And if you have a Microsoft licensing statement on which I touch in the end of this today's session, you will be able to see it there as well. So let's move on because we need to catch up with the pace. Otherwise, it's going to overrun more than 3 hours. This is going to be too much. So subscription licenses are easier. Subscriptions, obviously, they expire. You renew, they expire. Then you can resubscribe anytime. Gaps don't matter. It's a subscription license. You never have a perpetual license. It's just a subscription. You pay it, you have a license. It stops. You have to either resubscribe or delete the software. That's simple as that. So gaps really don't matter. And this is where I encourage everyone to move to just think about subscriptions, because just the future is with subscriptions. CapEx on software is something that I don't endorse. I haven't been endorsing for 10 years already. So that is subscription. Subscription licenses, old school subscription licenses, pre-CSP subscription licenses, bear with me, that you get through an enterprise agreement or through an open value, MPSA, other agreements like that, the old ones. These subscription licenses, they have software assurance built in, and with all these extended rights. So effectively, I think even at the price list, if my memory permits, I don't sell licenses. Even at the price list, all subscriptions are license plus SA. They kind of tell you that subscribe and you get both the license rights and the software assurance rights in one subscription. New subscriptions in the new world, the ones that you get through CSP, it's a new type of contract. Again, don't overthink it right now. New subscriptions come with software assurance equivalent rights. They may be just slightly different, but then again, slightly similar. So subscriptions have more rights than just perpetual licenses. Okay, so here's a question for you. Your software assurance expired on the 1st of March 2021. Today is 4th of August. Actually, today is 4th of August 2021. You need to say, what is your option? What are your options, actually? Let me rephrase that. Whilst you are answering, so this is a good question. MLS, transaction details, license means perpetual. With MLS, it's even easier. There's a license type. There's a column called license type. That basically just tells you if that's license, software assurance, or license plus software assurance. If you have an MLS file right now, go to the transaction details and find that tab. It's closer to the end, closer to the right side. So from you, what is going to be? I mean, left to me, right to you. This here. What are your options if you say expired on the 1st of March and today you need to say? Love it. The correct answer is B and C. You may either buy new licenses with SA if you have too much money, or just buy a subscription. Subscriptions are not cheap, but in the long term, I'm noticing that I'm not giving that advice online. Fundamental terms of Microsoft licensing. I'm not going to explain every single term. We won't have enough time, in 16, 15, 20 hours to explain all the Microsoft licensing terms. I just want to highlight the ones that are very critical so you understand them, and then, it'll give you a foundation to understand Microsoft licensing. The way you're thinking in the Microsoft licensing is a bit different. It's like learning a new language. So I took them from product terms. I added my commentary, so I'm not making up anything. So bear with me. So first and foremost, this license must be assigned before software is used. Why it's important? So, an example. You have people working from home. You work in a company. There are there's 1,000 people, 1,000 people. They have 1,000 company devices and maybe other devices that may use to access company service through VPN. They work from home because of COVID. All these people with their devices. If you do not restrict access to software that they access through your VPN to a certain limited number of devices or users, depending on the type of the license, and you just allow everybody to connect, then you need to buy licenses for them all. If it's a user license, for all these 1,000 users. If it's a device license, God knows how many device licenses, 4,000, 5,000, how many devices they have at home, the tablets, laptops, and whatnot. So why Microsoft is saying this? Even if only 10 users really use it, because they have a theoretical possibility to connect to that server from their device, they're not restricted. And the second they do that, they will be violating these fundamental rights because the license is not yet assigned to them. There's no license yet. When you know this rule, then questions like, "But why do we need to license every user that is potentially may access this software?" This is why. Because they may potentially access it, therefore there's a potential they may be breaching the terms. How companies deal with it? They limit access per device or per user, more often per user, which I'll cover later. It's a big risk. And then just jumping a bit ahead. So if you virtualize something and you want to use license stacking, if you know this term, this is why you need to license for the maximum number of virtual machines on the host, because licenses must be assigned before that virtual machine moved to that host. So license must be always assigned first, not just dropped somewhere, before it may be used, before you may use the software. Where do you assign license? So the Microsoft world, correct me if I'm wrong, because I had a few questions about this slide. The Microsoft world, there are three three areas where you assign licenses. So user licenses are assigned to users. What is a user? User, not like in the Oracle world. In the Oracle world, it may be a person or a non-human operated device. In Microsoft licensing world, a user is a person, one person, single person. If that person has multiple accounts, they need one license, usually, if it's a user license. So it's me with all my avatars, just one me. You assign a user license to me or to yourself. Device license, that could be a computer, could be a phone, could be, what Microsoft defines as hardware partition, just a piece of hardware. That is a device. And server is, although we put it in a separate bucket here, although license server is defined, if you put the definitions side by side in product terms. By the way, if you have product terms open right now, go there, go to the glossary, find license device and license server and compare it yourself. The only difference between device and server in the Microsoft definitions is it's a device running or capable of running. Okay, I don't like capable. I would rephrase it. Device running server software, that's a server. It's just another device. And by the way, that doesn't make all devices servers, but it makes all service devices from the Microsoft licensing point of view. Right. Any questions about agreements? Please come in a couple of weeks. We're going to be discussing them there. Where not to assign licenses. So one of the mistakes lots of people make, and even a colleague of mine, very good friend of mine, very good licensing consultant today said, like, why can't I assign license to virtual machine? What about SQL Server? You may calculate requirements per virtual machine, but the license is still assigned to this hardware server, not virtual, hardware server, where that VM is currently sitting. Always. Licenses are not assigned to virtual machines. If you want to argue with me, send me a quote from the product terms. We can discuss it. Where else? Connections. Connections don't like. There's no such metric as connection. So Microsoft doesn't have a metric called connection. You don't license connections. Correct me, by the way, because somebody said to me that there's some software where there are connections. I may be wrong, but I've never seen it myself. That's why. Question about user licenses. Do we need more licenses if a user have multiple accounts accounts with one subscription? With one subscription, that's a difficult one. So strictly speaking, Office 365, you only need, or Microsoft 365, you only need one subscription per user. That's strictly speaking. You may have a technical need for a kind of like non-user account or a service account to have an Office 365 license. But the licensing rule stipulates is that a user needs one license. You don't need multiple licenses. I don't think so. Good question again. Always doubt yourself. I'm doubting myself right now, but no, we don't. I don't think so. Are we going to have invites to the following events? Good one. So they're all still on. So if you're watching this on YouTube, I hope you're watching this on YouTube. You go to the channel page. There's a playlist called Microsoft Licensing Training. There are all the 8 events there, all of them. Basically, just next week, you just click on it, and not next week, on the 18th of connection. Thanks, Floris. Yeah, I was told there is connection. There's someone missing something. So good. We need to update this. This is a very good comment. And I have no idea about Azure Express route yet. because I've never seen it in real life yet. Good one. Thank you. Is that even a license? Yeah, well, all the services are licenses. Microsoft says all the services are licensed, not just services. So reassigning licenses. So when the license is assigned, we just talked about assigning licenses. When the license is assigned, it must stay where it's assigned for 90 days with the two exceptions. Exceptional circumstances. User is ill, sick. Then you may reassign user account to someone temporarily. Device is broken without beyond repair. You may reassign a license, if it's a reassignable license, not OEM, to a different device. These are exceptional circumstances. And then this rule of 90 days, and I'll explain to you shortly how, may also be waived by applying certain rights through software assurance. But then again, I'd like you to understand two things, which are fundamental for understanding virtualization then, because we get into virtualization in a few moments. License, even for the virtual machines, is always assigned to a host, and it must stay with the host for 90 days. That is the default rule. So for those of you who don't know what virtualization is, I'm not going to spend anyone's other time too much. So this is going to like maybe 1 minute. So what virtualization is? So you may know physical computers, physical layer, something running directly on the computer. That's your majority of the laptops, majority of either home devices is just a physical layer. But you may also create, use a specific software called hypervisor. You may also create pretend computers that will be running on your computer, but they will kind of pretend to the software that they are the computers. So you run an operating system, your Windows, and then you create another virtual machine with Windows, which thinks it's a separate machine, but running on the same hardware. These are virtual machines. They don't run directly on the hardware. They run through a specific layer called hypervisor. I know it may be a bit difficult. I have a video on the channel. It's called container licensing. I explained it much better in that video. So they're pretend computers. They're not real hardware computers, and they run on in a hypervisor on a physical computer. So you have you always have one physical operating system, and may have from 0 to however it's supported by the machine, virtual operating systems on one hardware host. This hardware, from the virtualization point of view, is called a host. This is not the term, host. Multiple hosts create a cluster. So this is a cluster. This is a so-called virtualization cluster. Multiple hardware servers running virtual machines in them. Look at the licenses that I put on this picture. So the licenses in the bottom row, these are the licenses for, say, operating systems or, I don't know, database or anything, at operating systems. Let's simplify this, at the physical level. So to license the physical operating systems. You may notice that on the leftmost host, there are two virtual machines, and I assigned two licenses for some, hypothetical software that runs on these virtual machines. I assigned it to the host, not to the virtual machines, because you may not assign it to virtual machines. And I assigned one license to one VM on the second host. Well, then what happens actually? The whole purpose of clustering, is resource allocation and reacting to, say, one host broke. So then other hosts in the cluster, they take that workload on them. VMs move like this. So they move around. So what just happened? Two virtual machines moved to the third host, then one came back, and then they stayed for some time like this. So what it then created is that the third host is now not properly licensed. It's not compliant because the VM is not licensed. And there's an extra license on the first host, but it may not move to the third one for 90 days. So right now, because they moved around, and as I said, it's the core functionality of a cluster. There's no reason to have a cluster without it. It's called vMotion, Virtual Machine Mobility. It can have various acronyms like HADRS, DR. In virtualized world, various things. To simplify this, we call it virtual machine mobility. We have mobile virtual machines. That's the whole purpose, to have a virtual cluster. So right now, we are not correctly licensed. We need that license from the host number 1 to move to the host number 3. We need it to move quicker, to be compliant. How do we do that? So we should have bought these licenses. with software assurance. So the right that allows you, permits you to move licenses in real time is called license mobility in server farms. Pay attention. It doesn't apply to all the products. It must be expressly granted to a specific product. Where do you check that? In the product list. Find the product and see if it has license mobility in server farms. That's how you do it. So SQL Server, does it have it? Go to the product terms, find it. Yes, it does. Windows Server, go to the product terms, open the Windows Server product entry, and find that it doesn't have license mobility in server farms. Stuff like that. Product terms, always. That's the Bible. Okay, I've got lots of questions about virtualization. I'd like to answer them. Wait a second. In a virtualization environment, do we need license for one server only? Do we need license per core per machine? Yeah, we'll get into that. And so, and firstly, I'm going to cover the basics today, and I'm going to give you a very expanded view of how servers are licensed in a specific one of the sessions in this training, which will be 2-3 hours dedicated just to servers and virtualization. In depth. Fun fact, some security features Windows 10 require to run hardware virtualized, thus the higher Windows CPU. Yeah, I know. In virtualization environment, do we need license one server only? It's the same, isn't it? It's the same question. Okay, so how many licenses we need to purchase? Please bear with me. Please wait for it. We'll get that. I'm just browsing through the comments. Can virtual machine inherit licenses from the physical? Yes, for certain products you can license the physical layer for certain products, and then virtual machines can be run there. There's a right called unlimited virtualization. I'll touch on it today. So, good question. Please wait for it. As you said, we can't assign license for VM, but we can assign license from cost optimization point of view. No, you can't assign it to the virtual machine. You can calculate it for the VM, but you have to assign it to the host. You can't assign it. It's just there's no right to assign it to a virtual machine. If we migrate VM to another server, do we need license or it will be moved? So if you kill that server, that probably is one of those exceptional instances when you can move licenses. But if you're just migrating it from a server to a server, then you need to move the license. Then the question, okay, this is a good one. Then the question is, for how long did that license stay on that initial server? If for more than 90 days, yes, you can move it. If less than 90 days, you have to wait until 90 days expire, and then you can move it. Or if you have software assurance, you can move it at any time, depending if the product has license mobility in server farms. That's how it's called. Right. So how do you assign a license? That's not always stipulated. So for online services, it's simple. You assign it, Office 365, you assign licenses to some account in your admin console. When it's not Office 365, then it's not really stipulated. It's up to you. You can have a software asset management tool, Snow, Flexera, Spera, SamPro, ZenSum. I can continue counting them. Software asset management tool or CMDB, where you may assign licenses, you assign them there. That's one of the ways. You just need to formally assign license to something. It could be an Excel spreadsheet, or I've seen it in small companies, licenses were just assigned on paper. Somebody just had records. This server, in that server room, we bought this license on the 4th of August 2021. That's another way of assigning license. You have a register of licenses. Microsoft does not stipulate how your register of licenses should be maintained. It doesn't. So another very, very, very valid term, when the license expires, subscription license expires, you must stop using the software or resubscribe. But you must, obviously, you don't have a license anymore, you must stop using it. When software assurance expired, you must stop using additional rights. This is a bit more complicated, but basically, so as I said, which additional rights when software assurance expires? What you need to stop? You have to break virtual clusters. You have to buy additional license for SQL failover. You have to potentially disable access to Office, to remote access to Office applications. You have to downgrade Windows Enterprise to Enterprise LTLC. So it's a huge headache. So if you want to cancel, let's say, as I've heard from, I'm dealing with a company right now that canceled the enterprise agreement back in 2018 and still don't have it. They didn't think what they did. They just canceled it. So why would we cancel? We'll just keep perpetual license, right? So all kinds of bad things happened. Multiplexing. One of the questions before was, do we need multiple licenses for? Do we need to license every end user if we have an intermediary server that only maintains one connection to the database? This is exactly this picture. Multiple users connect to a web server. Behind the web server is a SQL Server database. So disregard right now that there's an option to license SQL without CALs. Think about this is SQL Server that requires CALs. What I've seen some companies do, because it's the cheapest combination, is they would buy SQL Server license, database license, and they would buy one SQL Server client access license for that device. So that is a non-compliant configuration, because you must, client access licenses and any other software licenses must be licensed for the end consumer of the data or a service or anything like that. You may not use any pooling, any middleware to reduce the number of required licenses. This is called multiplexing. This is called indirect access with other vendors. Same thing. Microsoft call it multiplexing. So in this case, you don't need the SQL CAL on device CAL on that machine, but you need user CALs for all the users that access that web application. And then, kind of through that web application, it's operate with the data that sits on the database. Yeah. Here's a good comment. So multiplexing does not reduce CAL requirements. You need CAL for both direct and indirect access, or external connector, or any other things. But you need somehow licensed client access. Yeah. Next one. So we're still on multiplexing, aren't we? So the thing that unfortunately happens recently with so Microsoft introduced Office 365 meeting room licenses. We're not talking about them. I'm talking about before that. So what I've seen is a company has like 20 or 30 meeting rooms. And in each meeting room, they created a service account in Office 365, a SAM account, service account in Office 365, to which they assigned a Microsoft 365 or Office 365 E3 license. Why? So people that enter that meeting room, they immediately turn on the TV with the remote, and they may run PowerPoint under that or Outlook under that account, service account. The problem here is assigning a license to Office 365 license to a service account is not forbidden. It's fine. You need it technically, by all means. But what a few companies don't do is they don't think that every user that actually operates that computer, that telly, that whatever that is, like a projector, that uses that license, they also must have equivalent Office 365 license, at least, or higher. So you may not just, for the purposes of cost savings, do that trick. Another example from recent experience with Adobe, almost the same. Cloud applications, Adobe Cloud applications. You probably know they license per user, almost like Microsoft Office 365. They were even before Microsoft. And we've noticed accounts like, like temp 1, temp 2, temp 3, temp 4. We ask them, how do you do that? How do you use them? Because we don't like the names of these accounts. You may be at risk. Let's look at that. And they said, we have like 10 or 20 students coming and using these computers through these accounts. Like, but didn't you assign license to these users? And the customer said, did we have to? Yes, you did. Yes, you did, because it's a user license. You may not reduce your costs by doing that. It's not the right way of doing things. So when you have such a circumstance, when you have service accounts that you for the purposes of technical reasons, you may assign office licenses, Office 365 licenses to them, but then every user that operates through that indirectly through that account must also have an equivalent or a bigger license. So, Carl, about this, this is a fantastic question. You said that if you have shift workers, that device call would be more efficient. How does that interfere with this multiplexing? Good one, because that's a very good one. So let me go back to my SQL thing. I know what you're coming from. Let me go back to my SQL picture. So this SQL call, as I said, is a device call. And I said that you need to assign licenses to users. So actually you have a choice. So you have, because this is a device call. The multiplexing here happens because users use some other devices to access that web server, tablet, phone, like iPad, this iPad. I use it to connect to that. I need device license, device call for this device. So I have a choice of either user calls, which will probably be cheaper, or I have to license all their client devices with device calls, because they are not shift workers. They are not using the same device. They're connecting remotely to a web application. It's a web application. So it's not an interactive session. It's a web application. Sorry if it's not clear from the picture. Try. Yeah, Flores just answered that question very well. Downgrade rights, you'll be surprised. Those who know licensing, Microsoft licensing, you'll be very much surprised. I just recorded a video on this topic. Downgrade rights do not exist in product terms. Maybe they were. I mean, I need to check the previous. I think I dig back to like 2012. I haven't found them. So there's a right to use other versions and additions. There's no downgrade right. We call it. So you still need to remember that, but you need to remember that's not an official term. We call it for the purposes of, because it's quicker to communicate between ourselves, between licensing people and software asset management people. We have two replacement terms for that. Downgrade rights, right to use lower downgrade, that's version downgrade, and down edition when we want to downgrade the edition. So we use this downgrade, down edition, but officially in the product terms, they are combined in one single right, which is called right to use other versions and edition. Sonia, I understand that many of you must drop, so you can always come back and rewatch. This is going to be left on the channel, so thank you for joining today. Right. So right to use lower version. In volume licensing, you can downgrade to any version unless it's explicitly restricted. So there's an overarching umbrella right given to you that you may actually downgrade to any version from your licensed version. You have example, you have Windows 2019 licensed, you want to run Windows 2008 R2, please, through volume licensing channels. Online services downgrade is not permitted unless explicitly granted, so be careful with that. So that doesn't apply to online services. Check that. So you need to specifically look for different version rights if you need them in online services. Not assume that you have them. Don't assume. It's the opposite to volume licenses. Any other channel is you need to check with the exact terms for that channel, for that license that you bought somehow else, not through volume licensing agreements. So downgrade rights are only automatic and overarching and very, very flexible, only in product terms, in the licenses to which product terms applies. Right to use lower edition. So this one does not automatically exist, and it must be explicitly granted to a certain product, certain edition, certain version. So one of the biggest, assume it's not granted. One of the biggest mistakes is to use an Office Professional Plus license to cover an Office standard instance. Even if you have too many Office Professional Plus licenses, which you have nowhere to assign, you just don't have devices enough. You have 800 devices and 1,000 licenses. You have 200 free Office Professional Plus licenses. and you have 100 Office Standard instances, you may not take Office Professional Plus licenses and assign them to Office Standard instances. You may ask for an excuse, and Microsoft may give you that excuse either as a result of an audit or in writing somehow, but by default, product terms does not allow this version downgrade. It's not permitted. So you need to know which products allow that. And when we're going to be discussing particular products, I'm going to be telling you if this product has down addition rights or not. Right, moving on. I really need to speed up. So downgrade, this is a tricky one. I'm not even sure we need to spend too much time on it. Downgrade is permitted from only from a fully licensed instance. So it's not a license that is downgraded. So you have to have like abstract thinking. You first have to hypothetically license an instance of software with all the necessary core licenses, processor licenses, CALs, and whatnot. So you have to have enough licenses for that instance, not mixing different versions and editions. So you have to use exactly the same versions and editions of licenses for one instance. And then you may install or move a VM to that place, to hypothetical created place, that has a lower additional version, permitted lower additional version. So don't overthink it. I have a video on this channel on Some Expert TV that explains that particular thing. So to give you a reason why I recorded that video is a customer asked if they can assign 12 licenses of core licenses of Windows Server 2016 and 4 core licenses of Windows Server 2019, so mixing versions, to a single instance. So they may not, because they may not create with those licenses, they may not create the correctly licensed place for that server instance. They have to have exactly the same version and additional licenses for one instance. Oh, too much, probably too much. Okay, so licenses also may depend on each other. So sometimes you may buy a license and then just realize, oh, I've just thrown money away and there's no way to return that money. So what do you do? You need when you buy upgrades or step ups or additive CALs or anything that requires a qualifying license or a previous license or a lower version of a client access license, you need to always think that you need another license. So you need to firstly understand if that's a full license or just an upgrade or step up. And then you need to find the license to which you will then assign it, and only then place a purchase order. Otherwise, you're going to be wasting money. So there's this concept of upgrades and step-ups that requires previous licenses, qualifying licenses, licenses you're upgrading from, so you already have them. Sometimes there are software dependencies, so I would always pick it up. Any auditor would pick it up. If a company has SharePoint licenses but no SQL licenses, I would question how they use it. I'm not saying you cannot use it with SQL Server Express, but I would still check it, because if you run SharePoint, it technically requires Windows Server to be installed on, and it technically requires SQL Server database to work. So when you have SharePoint licenses, automatic thinking is, where are Windows Server licenses? Where are SQL licenses? They must be somewhere. So these license dependencies also exist. It's another one of Microsoft fundamental licensing things. So question to you. I made it up this morning, but it's not really made up. A national healthcare provider deploys 20 web servers, the whole farm, like the whole rack of 20 web servers, backed up by SQL Server database. So they have web software, they have SQL Server database, very much like in my previous pictures. They have 60,000 doctors using the online application that runs on those web servers. It's a website. They use this website, online application, to interact with their patients. How many SQL Server CALs does this configuration require? Answer A, 20 device CALs by the number of servers, 60,000 user CALs by the number of doctors, and number C is they need a different licensing strategy. I'll give you a few more seconds. Yeah, I'm just gonna look on the Other comments? Office down edition is a big compliance issue. Correct. Exception to this rule, I mean, that's about down editioning. Developer tools, which permits any prior version and any lower edition for a licensed user. Not only developer tools, SQL Server Enterprise, Windows Server Data Center. So there are other products that are expressly granted down edition rights. And some of them may be very complicated, which we'll cover in the SQL Server part. So the correct answer here is they need a different licensing strategy. The trick in this question is they interact through that web application with their patients. So their patients, I mean, I specifically didn't detail it how. Their patients also log into that application. They also need license. They would need user accounts. So device accounts would not apply because that would be multiplexing. In this case, they need a different licensing strategy. And when we get to SQL Server overview, I'll tell you what licensing strategy they need. So your organization bought laptops with Windows 11 Professional. Your IT, well, probably a bit ahead of time, but we need to think this training will stay on the channel. Windows 11 will become a reality soon. Your IT wants to downgrade them to Windows 10 Professional. How can you check if they may do that? Where? It's not. Going back to the previous question, here's a nice comment. If they're very rich, they can go with B. Do you mean 60,000 user licenses? That would not be counts. Sorry, that would not be the right one because they would need millions and millions and millions of counts for all the patients as well. Unfortunately, so they need a different licensing strategy. Neither works. Yeah, which is a core-based licensing. Jumping ahead of everybody. Thank you, Anis. So how can you check what you may do? I said your organization bought laptops with Windows 11 Professional. If we assume, I need to explain because many answers here will be correct. If these are OEM licenses, you would have to check number C, letter C, Microsoft license terms that apply to OEM licenses, not product terms. It's a different document, different website. If though you have also enterprise licenses, then you really need to check if you can do that. So it's a bit of a complicated thing. I'm not sure you can do that actually. I would have to check. I would have to study this. I would probably spend the whole day talking to Floris and other people, and in the community, and to you, and to my friends, to my colleagues, to Daryl, which just joined some expert, and figuring out the truth, which is not simple here. And by the way, speaking of Microsoft license terms, so it's actually a website, it's actually a thing, Microsoft.com/use terms, which has all the terms that are not volume terms. OEM retail, it's all there. Microsoft.com/use terms. Check it out. Moving on, so closer to the end, Microsoft licensing models. Oh my dear. I hope you're sitting. I hope you're, because we're losing people, I can see rapidly. Licensing models and metrics. So just an overview. So this is an overview. I'm just going to overview current models and metrics. What is a metric? And by the way, SPLA is vastly different. Whatever I tell now, do not apply to SPLA if you're studying SPLA right now, because everything is different in SPLA. If you have to, if you are researching or you work in a service provider, forget Microsoft licensing, this one, volume licensing, entirely. You have to relearn. Right, so what is a metric? A metric is something measurable that basically you use to calculate how many licenses you need for an instance or for a configuration, and then how much it's going to cost you. That's your metric. It might be maybe. These are the examples, by the way. I don't need to just tell them. User, device, instance, processor, core, applications per user in Power Apps. So it's a countable thing. You can count users, you can count devices. There are interesting peculiar metrics in the non-Microsoft world, and I was told somebody has seen a contract with Microsoft that was based on a non-standard metric, which was companies' turnover in billions. So that could be another license. It's still countable. It's just a peculiar licensing metric. Oracle does that often. passenger throughput in an airport. That's Oracle for you. So in our simple Microsoft terms, this is going to be what you're going to be dealing with. These names on screen. So per device, the basic licensing model per device. When you think per device, think traditional Office Project Visio, not 365. The ones that you used to buy from Office 97, 95, XP, before. So Office, what was the first version? I don't even remember. I think my first Office was Office 2000. So back to that time. That software is licensed per device, never per user, not anyhow else, just per device. So the common misconception is that you need to license devices where the Office is installed. So what you need to remember, what I'd like you to remember, is that per device license is actually assigned to licenses accessing software. It may be installed on one computer, but that can then you take another one or an iPad and access from an iPad, say from here to that laptop. I actually need a license for Office for this laptop as well. So that's a device license. It licenses every client device. And then any user of the licensed device may then use Office. So it's a device license. Any user. So that's how simple that was. It's traditional software. That's how the majority of Microsoft licensing was 20 years ago, based on devices, based on device licenses. Now, I explained to you about the local copy, so simple users. This is not remote access. Sorry, I'm using the same arrows, but this is not. This is a local access. So specifically, just look at the title. That's fine. One copy to this device as a site, it's fine. But when we have remote desktop sessions to a server with some sort of VDI, RDS, whatever other terms remote access, working from home, from their laptops. If their laptops do not have Office licenses or Office locally installed that is also licensed, they will still need Office licenses, even though they only access it remotely. And a good replacement will be here. You think, okay, laptop, maybe it has an Office, maybe not. So what I see, what I have seen in another engagement recently with a customer is that they assigned Office 365 licenses to all the users. Each user had an Office 365 license. They had Office 365 deployed on each laptop. So far, so good, isn't it? So users are locally licensed, everything is fine. And they have Office Professional 2010 deployed on a Citrix farm for technical reasons. And then everybody uses it because there's a business application that uses it. They are licensed for Office 365. They're not licensed for Office 2010. So they had to either reconfigure the, I don't know what they're going to end up with. I told them you need to either reconfigure the solution with other licenses, or you need to buy perpetual Office licenses for all these devices. There's really no choice. So remotely accessed, you still license end devices with this device, this licensing model. Authorized device as well, because you need them to license all the phones and tablets and whatnot. So which is a headache. Per user, think per user, think Office 365. That's the most simple one, probably, just per user. Although there are plans where you can buy per device licenses. Office 365 is majorly per user. You have a licensed user, and that user may access online services from any licensed device. But there are other limitations. So it's not as simple. There are other limitations in Office 365. So number of local instances of software may be limited. It may be 0, it may be 5. Look for the terms of the specific subscriptions, if you're allowed to download Office and install it on your device, and how many. Device limitations may apply. So if you know Office for frontline workers, there's a limit of 10.1 inches for a screen size. So that may be another limitation. So you're not necessarily allowed to use bigger screens. And then for certain online applications, Secondary metrics may apply in addition to the user, like number of apps they may run. Yeah. Another licensing model where you can choose per device or per user. And the good representation of this licensing model is virtual desktop access license. It's sort of like a CAL, client access license, but for you to be able to connect to a remote session of Windows 10, virtualized session of Windows 10, you need a VDA license. Not a Windows 10 license, no. So you virtualize Windows 10 on the server, you don't need Windows 10 license for the server. Actually, it's a question, but nobody does it. So that's why there's gray area with Microsoft. But then your users need some sort of a VDA access. And even they don't have any qualified and inclusion licenses, they need these VDA licenses. And you have a choice for VDA to buy either licenses per user or per device, like with CALs. So this is like if Office, traditional Office is strictly per device. If Office 365 is majorly per user, this one is a binary choice, user or device. Just buy the ones you need and assign them accordingly. The desktop operating systems, I specifically flipped the licensing model with the groups of products. And by the way, Microsoft actually has desktop operating system licensing model because it's mind-boggling. So we're not going to burn time today because that would take another 4 hours just to explain to you all the details of desktop operating system licensing. It's crazy. It's absolute madness. So, but there are fundamental things one fundamental thing that you know. Any Windows license, except for GetJenuine, which is an exception. Forget GetJenuine. 99.999% of the license that you buy through volume channels for Windows Enterprise, Windows 10 Enterprise, Windows 11 now, they are upgrade licenses. So you must have some sort of a qualifying, it's called qualifying license, to be able to upgrade from already on your computer. Where this is why I called it this is my name, per device plus per user, is that you probably know that I hope you do. If you don't, here's something for you to learn. Subscription upgrades nowadays, like Windows E3, Windows E5, they are user licenses. Now, the mind-boggling bit is these user licenses require qualifying operating systems that are licensed per device. I've never seen Windows meticulously managed, but auditors know that too. They don't chase it usually. So as long as it's generally fine, it's fine. So imagine this. So you have to first buy devices with qualifying operating systems per device. And then if you want to upgrade to Windows Enterprise 3, you can then buy user subscriptions, but that subscription may only apply to devices that are already licensed with qualifying operating system that is licensed per device. I specifically don't try to simplify this because it's bloody crazy. Next one, moving on. We're not doing that bad, to be honest, as far as I understand. So it's 16:07, so we've only been here for 2 hours. Something, and I've got another hour in my pocket. Server plus CAL, which is Microsoft calls server/CAL. I don't like the slash, but that's how it's called. Why I don't like the slash? To me, slash means it's either this or that. It's not. So server CAL model is server plus client access license. Server plus client access license. The typical products that fall into this category are so-called Office service or productivity service. Now they're called Office service. They used to be called productivity service. They used to be called something else. Exchange on premises, not online, on premises. SharePoint on premises, not online. Skype for Business, which has been retired, but still some companies still run it, and they may come 2031, you may still find a client that still runs Skype for Business server on premises. I can even bet my money on it. So first thing is, what you need to understand is that each instance, so there are no processes, no cores, each instance of a server software requires a server license. And then, because we already talked about CALs, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Internal users also require CALs, either per user or per device, as normal CALs as we already discussed in theory. External users, if SharePoint, Exchange, or Skype for Business is 2013 plus, external users do not require neither CALs nor external connectors. What product term says, external connector is included in the license. Translating to human language, you don't need to license external users, with exceptions. With exceptions, which I actually found out recently because I needed to study this, and I was quite surprised that if you want to use advanced functionality of Exchange, external users require CALs. There's no external connector for it. There's no waiving of that requirement. You just have to buy an Exchange Enterprise CALs, and probably actually, I think, also Exchange Standard CALs, because Enterprise CALs are put on top of the Standard CAL for external users that require additional functionality on Exchange. So look for that. So many people, me included, make this mistake thinking that, okay, I've heard somewhere that Exchange, SharePoint, and Skype for Business don't require license for external users. There are exceptions, there are caveats. Read the small print. Read the small print. Product terms is public. You don't need to ask anyone to get access to it. It's public. Thanks God we have Microsoft, sometimes. Very quick metric into hardware metrics. Dive into hardware metrics, because we had 28 people answering the question about IT background that they have no idea. So for you, if you don't know, very quickly. In the beginning, they were just server licenses because, well, Microsoft, it's a story. Microsoft had server licenses. Service was simple, one processor service. How companies scaled up when they needed more performance, they bought new servers. This is how it was done. Then at some point, and maybe even from beginning, but what companies started buying, that they realized that they overpaid maybe for licenses or for some other reasons. They started buying servers with more processors. What it means then is that you probably don't need that many servers anymore to scale up. Some of the applications you just deploy on the bigger spec server with more processors, up to 4, up to 8 processors per server. To which Microsoft reacted, we're losing revenue. Let's charge them per processor. So they changed some of the server licenses, not all of them, to processor licenses. And that's your first metric. So what it means is that now, to have a licensed instance, if you have a processor metric, you don't, previously you just had to buy one license. Now you have to buy licenses that are equal to the number of processors. This is your processor metric. So if you assign one license to this to processor server on the left, the software is not yet licensed. You must cover all the processors. That's how it worked. Then it went further, actually. So as I said, several processor licenses are now required, and there may be even a minimum of 2. Some licenses had that. So even if you have one, then since Microsoft switched to that licensing model, you would have had to buy at least two processors. Microsoft even had 2 processor licenses for Windows Server 2012 R2, so you just couldn't buy a single processor license. It went further. So manufacturers of servers thought, okay, scaling up additional processors, it's difficult. It's difficult. So let's just pack multiple processors into one processor, physical processor. And they invented this cores. So on this picture, I split processors in 4 cores, each processor in 4 cores. So each core is kind of almost like a processor, almost like a processor on its own. Again, you don't need to scale up by buying bigger servers. You don't need to scale up by buying more processors. You just need to buy better processors with more cores. We're losing revenue again, said Microsoft, and decided to switch some of the processors to core licensing model because Oracle did it, somebody else did it, and Microsoft actually one of the latest who switched to core licenses. So, and now several core licenses are required to license one instance. Wow, that's cool. And there are minimums. So, And the last metric is virtual machine, has virtual CPUs or virtual cores, is the same. In the Microsoft licensing world, virtual core equals virtual CPU. It's exactly the same thing. It's just, the virtual cores, virtual CPUs that appear in the virtual machines. Don't waste too much time on that. SQL Server, quick overview. You can either license it per server cal, or you can license it per core, per the number of cores. Server cal model is available to SQL Server Standard nowadays. It's not available to SQL Server Enterprise anymore since 2012. There's an interesting exception I'll cover in a specialized SQL Server session. But then again, just remember that cal model is now only available for SQL Server Standard, and SQL Server BI is another one that was I think it was end of life around 2016. So we had SQL BI 2012, SQL BI 2014, and then it stopped. It was also cal-based licensing. You may still find SQL Server BI in someone's infrastructures, and it is cal only. No choice. With SQL Server Standard, you have a choice, cal or core, and then with SQL Enterprise, you can only license per core. Very quick overview of the terms. In the server cal model, so SQL has no external connectors. If you need to license external users, you have either choice of cals, or if it's a web application, switch to cores. You have to flip to cores because there's no external connect. There's no way to have a blank licensing for external users. You have to switch to cores. That's the different licensing model. Remember my question about 60,000 doctors? The right way there would be to switch SQL Server to core licenses. And then, for SQL Server, you have a typical choice of user and device cals. So you have to buy a server in that model, and you have to buy enough number of either user or device cals. If you decide to license per core, in the per core model, cals are not required. No requirement for cals. You purely license SQL Server in the core model, different kinds of licenses, core licenses, and there are two minimums you must remember. Two minimums. Again, more details in a specialized session. When you assign licenses of SQL Server to a physical layer, to a physical machine, you have to license all the cores in all the processors, but also for each processor, you have to keep in mind that you need a minimum of 4. So imagine you have a server with 2 single cores, some old server, 2 single core processors. You need 8 cores for that server because you need a minimum of 4 for each physical processor. So that's the minimum. And if you have a server with 2 processors, each 16 cores, then you need 32. It's a simple calculation. The only thing you need to remember, you cannot go below 4 per processor. You can go up, but you can't go down. So when good question about the SQL Server instance. So is it limited per SQL instance? In a SQL Server in one operating system can have as many instances as you want. License it once, and then in one, not virtualized. In one operating system, you can have as many instances as you want. Virtual instances are different. So you have to count requirements for each virtual machine. But then inside the virtual machine, again, you have an unlimited number of instances. So each virtual machine, each physical machine, is licensed separately for SQL Server. This is virtualization, how you calculate it. So standard edition, you calculate requirements per VM. I remind you still assign license to the hosts, but you calculate requirements per virtual machine with a minimum of 4 cores per virtual machine. So if your virtual machine is smaller than 4 vCPUs or vCores, it just doesn't make sense to make it smaller. Make it 4 because you still need 4 licenses assigned to it anyway. With Enterprise Edition, you actually have a choice, either also calculated per VM, and in 95% of cases, that will still be the most economical option. But if you have a very heavy SQL Server estate, then you may consider licensing that at the hardware level. Again, wait for the specific session on SQL Server. And then you may assign these licenses to the hardware level and license the host. And if you have software assurance on those licenses, then you may run as many SQL servers, virtualized, containerized, not containerized, on that host. When it's licensed at the hardware level with Enterprise Edition, it's not, that right is not available to Standard Edition. Moving on. So, another thing, so core licenses are usually sold in packs. SQL Server licenses, as far as I know, are only sold in 2 core packs. So when you do calculations and then place an order, please remember that 40 cores equals 20 packs for 2 core packs. Do that division, or you'll buy too many. Windows Server per core plus cal, another licensing model. So here you have to license instances per core, but you also require cals. So if SQL Server per cal does not require cals, Windows Server does. So you have to license both Windows servers themselves and also client access licenses. And it's easier to show this on pictures. And by the way, external connectors are also available. It's easier to show this on pictures than to talk for too long, because I appreciate the time. We've been already online for 2 hours, 20 minutes. Look at this server. So the first server has one single core processor, old server from Stone Age. Because there's a minimum of 16 cores per server, you may not assign fewer than 16 cores to this server. So you still need to assign 16 cores here. Second server is another one from, 10 years ago. 2 4-core processors. In total, we have 8 cores. And you think, okay, I need 8 cores for this server. No, you still need 16 because, 2 rules apply here. Firstly, is per each processor, you need at least 8 cores. So even if you just assign 8 and 8, you'll get 16 as the total. That's your minimum. And then you also have the 16 minimum for the entire box. So you have to apply both minimums to your calculations. Drinking water. Yes, I would. I think my thank you for that. Yeah, thank you. This one was a nice comment. I think you can use some drinking water. Yeah, that was a good comment. Thank you for reminding me, by the way. Sorry, missed. If I use server metric on SQL Server, is that on SQL Server? Thank you for talking about SQL Server. I can't use external connector. So on SQL Server, when you use server metric, external connector is just not available for SQL Server. It's just one of those products that have exceptions. Microsoft does not offer an external connector for SQL Server. Microsoft, when you ask them why, they say, switch to cores. You want external connections, switch to cores. Right. So, and if you have bigger servers, the calculations become a bit more interesting. So this was the first picture on top with 4 1-core old but powerful server, HP something from my childhood. 4 cores, each has a single core. So in total, this server has only 4 cores. Single core, 4 processors. In total, 4 cores. You must assign 32 core licenses to it because of the minimum of 8 cores per 1 processor. It just economically doesn't make sense to run old servers anymore. The other one, 20 cores, simple. It's just 20 cores because you're already above all the minimums. So when it overruns that 16 cores per server, you just assign the total number of cores in the server. Simple as that. I hope you understand this. We're going to have many more examples in a specialized training when we're going to be talking about data center licensing. Virtualization. So one critical thing you must remember about Windows Server is that Windows Server has no license mobility in server farms, even with software assurance. You may not reassign licenses more often than once in 90 days. That's why when you license Windows Server in a cluster, you must think I need Windows Server Data Center for unlimited virtualization, because Data Center Edition allows you to run as many VMs with Windows Server and containers on a single host. And if you have a cluster with multiple hosts, as in my previous pictures, you just assign data center license to the hardware level. With Standard Edition, its virtualization is a bit trickier. The formulas to calculate the number of processors and cores is exactly the same. You don't calculate them for virtual machines, you still calculate them for the hardware. And then when you licensed the hardware, you may run Windows Server Standard in a physical operating system. And then as long as you don't run anything else in that physical operating system, also in 2 VMs. If you need more virtual machines, you have to relicense the entire box. So to give you an example, you assign 16 cores, and that's enough to run 2 VMs. You need to run 4 VMs, you assign another 16 cores, another set of licenses, full set of licenses. That gives you right for more. It's called license stacking, and I have a video about it on the channel. And we're going to, again, touch on it in the data center licensing section. So this is just an overview of licensing models. So, yeah, so that's the difference. Standard Edition, license the hardware, can run up to 2 VMs. Data Center Edition, license the hardware, can run unlimited number of virtual machines. Windows Server core licenses are sold in 2 core packs, 8 core packs in CSP and 16 core packs. So what I'd like you to remember is a pack is not a license. It's a 16 license pack. You just buy one, but you have 16 licenses. So you may break it, you may reshuffle them, you may reassign them, you move them around. It's not unbreakable. It's a big pain point for me, this thing. I have, again, another video on this channel about it. System Center is an interesting beast. We get into the end of the licensing terms, by the way, like example licensing models. So it's going to be System Center now, and the next one is Visual Studio. So System Center is a completely different paradigm. So if you have server software and you have CALs, client access licenses, with all the other servers, System Center works kind of the opposite direction. So what is System Center? It's a software to manage devices, users, and servers. So you have management licenses that work very, very similar to CALs when we're talking about client devices. So laptops, desktops, client devices. In that case, System Center management licenses are assigned to those laptops or desktops. Or actually, you can have user licenses, user management licenses. You assign it to a user, you can manage all the devices of that user. If you're able to track that with your tools. Let me go back. So when it comes to client devices, not servers, it's simple. It's almost like a CAL. The other thing which is unique to System Center is that the server components themselves, the management server, the one from which you manage the devices, do not require paid licenses. It's still a license, but it's free of charge. So you may deploy as many System Center Configuration Manager instances as you want. It's still zero cost. It's not unlicensed. It's just a free of charge license. Then when you manage servers, then you need to tune your brain accordingly to understand that. When you manage servers, you deploy System Center agents to those servers. System Center Configuration Manager, Operations Manager, other components. Don't memorize the names. If you manage servers, then the licensing of those servers for System Center is an exact copy of Windows Server per core licensing without CALs. It's all the same calculations, all the same minimums, all the same editions, Standard and Data Center. And you can't even buy System Center without a say. So when you manage servers, you need to license those servers with System Center Standard or Data Center. And by the way, Microsoft, which is not on these slides, Microsoft, to simplify all this, because lots of companies use System Center and lots of companies use Windows Server. They even offer a bundle which is called Core Infrastructure Suite, which is basically a bundle of Windows Server plus System Center with exactly the same licensing model. So that's it for System Center. Visual Studio is the last one, which is pretty unique for on-premises. I specifically do not want to dive into cloud licensing because it's the session number 3 in this course, cloud licensing. We will discuss those licensing models there. Visual Studio is licensed per designated named user. You actually have to tell Microsoft the name of the user. They have to register. You have to know the name. And some auditors are so meticulous. They actually compare the names that you declared to the names that you have. You assign the licenses in your volume license service center or any other tool that Microsoft provides you. What is cool about Visual Studio is a licensed user may deploy as many Visual Studios as they want. And if they buy it with a subscription, they also get other Microsoft software, depending on the level of subscription. In the smallest, they get Windows Server and SQL Server that they may deploy in unlimited number of instances in their own sandbox when they develop, deploy, demonstrate, test something. So it's a development paradise. The problem, there's only one problem with that development paradise, is that every user, every person accessing that sandbox, that development paradise, also requires a license. And although user acceptance testing, so I tell Xyral, I tell Flores, I tell someone else, can you please test my software? This is a new version. I'm not keen to deploy it yet. I'd like you to test it. They're not part of my team. They're not part of sysadmins. They just users from the organization. Imagine that. And they test it. They don't need development license. But system administrators, backup operators, security people, IT department, if they somehow support such secure, configure, monitor that development environment, they also need exactly the same Visual Studio subscriptions or MSDN platform licenses. So please bear in mind, I managed a customer that only has 6 developers, but they also have 100 admins. And those development machines are included in the overall life cycle of management and configuration. We checked that all the 100 admins, 99 admins, they do have access to all these machines. They do manage them. So actually, it was cheaper for that customer to buy production licenses than buying subscriptions for 100 something people. Question. One of the last questions, by the way. So, your IT department wants to procure laptops with pre-installed Linux operating system because it's cheaper, but plans to image them with Windows Enterprise. And you think that it's a good idea or a bad idea? Good idea because savings are good, but maybe it's a bad idea. And whilst you're thinking about this question, system centralizing is buying points. Yes, yeah. When it comes to clients, yes. With servers, it's a bit more difficult because then, they still earn points, but the licensing is similar to Windows Server. Carl asked me, what means UAT? User acceptance testing. It's when you ask someone to test a developed application or a solution from your regular employees, not part of IT, not part of development group, not professional testers, but just your accounting department. You deploying something for them. You want them to test it. In that case, when they access just for pure that particular testing reason, they don't require MSDN licenses or Visual Studio subscriptions. I hope it makes sense. Wow, this is very advanced. Only in Azure Stack HCI. Carl, I need you. I need to talk to you because you really are contributing really cool things to today's session. Okay, so it's a bad idea, obviously, because you need some pre-installed. There's still a way out of it. You can buy get genuine Windows Advanced GWA Windows licenses for those computers, but it's going to be more expensive than you would have paid for laptops with pre-installed Windows. You won't achieve savings in that configuration. Another question: you look at the Windows Server Core license calculations, and then you notice that the calculated licenses don't match the physical core. So why is that? Is it a human error, or is it because of the per core licensing requirements? good question. Can the underlying base license use okay, so GGWA can be a qualifying operating system that you install on empty computers or computers with Linux. We actually aren't doing that bad. It's only been 2.5 hours, and I thought it's going to take 3. So, okay, so it's a cheeky question. If they it's both A and B. I will check both. What would be 100, not 100%. Well, I would be alarmed if the number of cores would match the number of licenses. Then I would have thought maybe that's a human error. Maybe they didn't know the rules. So in this case, it could be either A or B. So obviously there are per core license requirements. And if you have, as I explained to you, if you have 4 processors with 1 core, you still need 32 licenses that they won't match. 4 and 32, they don't match. And that's not an error. But maybe, somebody calculated that and thought, I need 16, like a colleague of mine said, but I only need 16 for that, for that service. So it could be either A or B in this regard. But I still, my idea was it's the answer B. That's because of the per core license requirements. And I've had this. I set an Excel spreadsheet. So I asked one in the government organization. I asked a security department that wouldn't let me touch the service. I said, okay, just give me the number of cores in your service, just your configuration. Don't give me the names. Don't give me other things. Just put in like server 1, server 2, server 3, and give me the number of cores in this service. I sent them back the calculation. They came back and said, that's ridiculous. Why the they had all servers. Why are the numbers so you're not calculating it correctly? We're not going to pay it. Okay, I said, fine. I'll send you an Excel spreadsheet that will calculate it for you. So you will see how I did this. And I created a protected SQL Server worksheet that had all the minimums in the formulas. They're not difficult. So I sent it to them. I said, just type in your numbers yourself and see how you get to these numbers. They still called me next day. I was sitting in another department of that organization as a police force. And they called me and said, Alex, it's still ridiculous. We don't want to pay that. I can do nothing about it. That's how Microsoft wants you to license it. So that's it. AMD with 16 cores in one socket in the server. 16 cores. Why not? Total 16 cores because your minimum per server is 16. Your minimum per processor is 8. So it's 16. Simple. If only someone managed to buy a server. Anyway, right. All right. Let's look at the questions. So can a developer use probably her corporate production machine as a development machine, or is a developer network required? Nigel, this is such an... I now need to ask you lots of questions in return. Like, what do you mean? What's the configuration of their development? Why are they using their corporate production machines for... They can install Visual Studio on it. Why not? Why not? They can develop something on their corporate machine. Yes. But they still need the Visual Studio subscription if they need Visual Studio. They can develop other software. They can develop... Anyway, let me rephrase this. I think I'll simplify it to you now. Development licensing is an exception. The default licensing is production. It's just when you want additional perks of development licensing, like that unlimited deployment and, do that sandboxing, then you consider, and it may be cheaper for you, then you consider development license. But the default licensing is always production. So who forbids you to develop in a production environment? By all means, as long as you have the licenses. That's how I explained it in 2014, actually. Exactly that. Production licenses is default. So if you really want to drop off, there's another question I have here, by the way. Okay, please crack it. Those who watch my videos, they know the answer. This is the question. How many 16-core packs of Windows Server Standard do you have? Actually, edition doesn't matter. Data center is the same. How many 16 core packs of Windows Server do you have to to assign to two boxes. Each box has 24 servers, 4 16-core packs, 3 16-core packs, or the question is nonsensical. I'll give you some time. Let me just look at the other comments and in the meanwhile. Yeah, not many already by this time. Well, I mean, I can see the numbers, and guys, 256 people survived to this point. Kudos. Really stoic. Anyway, so the correct answer was either B or C. So, but this is the caveat. So I asked how many core packs you need to assign. You don't assign core packs. Remember, you assign single cores. So the question itself is wrong. Still, I mean, it does make it sort of makes sense, and you still understand that because you can break the 16 core packs. They're not single licenses. So you just basically what you buy is when you assign 3 cores, effectively you assign just 48 cores. Sorry, 3 packs. You effectively assign 48 cores. The question should have been formulated in a way: how many core licenses do you require for this service? But that's the trick. And some people think that the 16 core pack is a single license, so you can't break it. And you need 4. Never. It's not a license. It's a box of licenses. It's this. It's like a pack of batteries. I can break them. I can unpack them. It's not a single license. Single license here is a battery in that box. Yeah, and there 3. It must be 3. Sorry, thank you for that. Very, very good spot. It's 3. Yeah, fixed it. Fixed it. Yeah, 16 plus 8 made 2. Yeah, simple calculation. Yeah. Anyway, a very quick last section, about 10 slides, even less than that, about the audits. If you want to stay with me, just a bit, because Microsoft licensing does not exist in vacuum without audits. So Microsoft don't do audits right now very much, but we expect them to return to the practice. They may be very relaxed because they have very good financial results right now. They're not very bothered about it. The other thing is Microsoft employees are no more rewarded for license sales. But they still may use audits as an incentive to move someone to the cloud, for which then for consumption, and it's a very long story how it works. So if you question yourself, why did I receive an audit letter? Do I have to react to that? Yes, you have to, because you contractually obliged to react to the audit. You contractually agreed to be audited when you signed a volume licensing agreement. Or maybe another licensing agreement with Microsoft. They sneak those audit clauses in all their agreements. So yes, that's it. Audits, proper audits. There's a difference with some reviews. Is audits are performed by the big 4 companies: Deloitte, EY, KPMG. Actually, PwC doesn't do audits, do they? I haven't seen one. And we'll have a dedicated session about the audits closer to the end of the training course, somewhere in the end of October. There are also some reviews which are, I don't know, somebody told me they're not a thing anymore. There's only one incentive where Microsoft actually ask partners, Microsoft pay a Microsoft partner, so they come to your customer's premises and they help you manage your licenses or help you review Azure migrations or something else. If there's a part, if a part of the exercise is if one of the deliverables, ask them if one of the deliverables to Microsoft is an effective licensing position. Assessing your if you owe Microsoft anything, if you're licensed enough, then in that case, when Microsoft, any of such engagements, when Microsoft paid to a customer, they accept the return on investment, ROI. So be careful with those. If you don't think you're in a good position,
You have a right to refuse. They are not audits. You didn't agree to them. You're not contractually obliged to participate in some review by a partner. But in some territories, and I know that in Romania that happened, I was told. I haven't seen it. I was told. I said I know. I was told. If you just say no, forget it. Don't come to my premises. I don't want you. You may be sent an audit because it's just phishing. It's not really, but so be careful refusing them. Let's go to self-assessment. So obviously, you're learning all what I'm talking about right now, and then you decide, okay, let's assess our. I know all about licensing. Let's assess our position. So where do you start? So firstly, I recommend every company to do licensing assessments around some compelling events when big changes are coming. So firstly, 6 to 12 months prior to any true-up or renewal, any change in your licensing agreements. Any annual event in your licensing agreements. We will talk about them in 2 weeks about licensing events. And you can also have a couple of videos about enterprise agreement on this channel as well. They will explain to you what renewals and true-ups are. Then before any IT transformation, big migration, huge project, virtualizing everything, migrating everything to Azure, do a self-assessment, assess yourself, your position. Before any merger and after, or for divestiture, because that's how you know when you assess yourself if you can optimize or avoid costs, or if you need more licenses, or need to reshuffle licenses, or maybe this project should not be stopped. I don't like, IT people hate us, licensing people, because we're always somewhere there, we're a pain in the ass. But don't do that. It's going to cost us. It will cost us a lot. Don't do that. Collaborate with IT. Help them to find the best solution. But also, when it's a merger acquisition, in many cases, a self-audit answers the question: what the hell have we just acquired? What is this company? What is their licensing position? So do a self-assessment, and how you do that. So just a few simple tips, or we're going to discuss about it in much more detail in the specific audit section. So your entitlement, where do you check your licenses that you have? So I wish somebody kept all their licenses well registered, all the records clean and pure and fantastic. I've seen very few cases when the company really managed their licenses well. So if you need to remember what you bought, you actually unfortunately have to go to multiple sources of information. So I specifically didn't put MVLS, Microsoft Volume Licensing Services portal here, because I don't know if it still exists. Somebody told me it still does. If you have Select Plus licenses, there'll be an MVLS. I don't know that. I haven't touched it for ages. VLSC is a place where you would be able to see, not all, but your most recent purchases on an enterprise agreement, and your all the history of your open licenses. So again, don't overthink right now the names of these licenses. I'll explain them to you in all these channels in the next upcoming session on the 18th of August. If you buy them through MPSA, you have to go to Business Center. If you buy them through any kind of a CSP agreement, you have to go to office.com, and they're all in all these places. Another shortcut, which is not also completely solving all the issues, is a Microsoft license statement. It's we discussed it briefly today in comments. Microsoft license statement is an Excel file that Microsoft export from their databases, which contains all the transactions, with a caveat, not all, all the transactions on traditional licensing agreements like Select Plus, Open, Enterprise Agreement. MPSA will not be there unless you ask for it to be added. License transfers, whenever you transferred something to another company during the divestiture or any other, you sold your second-hand licenses. You can do that in the EU. You can sell your second-hand licenses. Check out valuelicensing.com or their competitors in Germany or Netherlands. And CSP purchases will not be there ever. So I haven't seen an MLS where the customer would ask you, can you add please all my CSP licenses there as well? So with those caveats, it's still a good source of information. But from my experience, there are some things I don't do and some things that I do with the MLS, which I will pass on to you right now, so you will not make the same mistakes and you will be prepared. So you have to order a Microsoft license statement either from Microsoft themselves or from a Microsoft partner. You can't do it yourself as an end customer if you're not Microsoft partner, because Microsoft Profiling Services is a service that you have to be a Microsoft partner to log into it. Let's put it this way. MLS is good question. Is MLS still available in case of Select Plus? Yes. Yeah. All your Select Plus transactions will be on your Microsoft license statement. If you know you had Select Plus and somebody interesting. And somebody told you that on your MLS, you have no Select Plus licenses there. So they're fooling you. They're playing up. I've seen this. Dirty games, dirty tricks. They profile an MLS in such a way so you would buy more licenses. They just basically hide your licenses from you. So question that. Good question from Floris. Microsoft is currently using a new internal portal, much more inside than they can find. I'd like to see that. It's another rumor. I thank you for that. I'm now very much intrigued as well. Request an MLS from Microsoft. You can request an MLS from Microsoft. They will give it to you. But then be careful with certain regional Microsoft offices, which also play dirty tricks with excluding some licenses they don't want you to see. Anyway, careful. So first things first, when you ask someone to profile, it's called profile, to create an MLS for you, ask them specifically to add an MPSA tab to it, because it's not there by default. I'm seeing cases now that it's there by default and it's empty when the customer doesn't have an MPSA, but it used to be that you had to actually specifically ask for it. And then the first thing when you receive it, when you receive it is you check your legal entities, and as I just mentioned, also check that there may be some agreements missing. Go back to the profiling team and to whoever you ask the MLS to be created and sent to you. Go back to those people and say, I'm not happy. I want this fixed. Sometimes they may need your help to get it fixed. Sometimes you may have bought licenses under a different name and they don't know about it. So check that. Check agreements and only then go to licensing summary. And here's some practical advice about licensing summaries. I do not ever trust the summary that is on the license summary tab. I haven't seen an accurate one. Because we don't live in a perfect world. So I always recheck it. I always double check. I always question. Start from the latest licenses now, not from the oldest. So because as long as we have enough latest licenses, you don't need to dig into 1995 or something like 2003. If you had any license transfers, then there's nothing you can do. You have to do a manual calculation. If licenses were transferred to you, they won't be on the MLS. Microsoft don't see that. If you transferred or sold a license on the second-hand market, they will still be on the MLS, although you don't have them. And Microsoft won't see that in their database. So you have to keep track. This is something that will never be on the MLS. You have to keep track of all the transfers. And then MPSA license will not be in the summary. They will not be added to the summary. You have to calculate them yourself. Then again, no CSP. Inventory. So you have licenses, and then you need to compare them to your software. So first thing, and I didn't put it on the slide, but I'd like to emphasize: do not ever compare number of licenses to the number of running instances. You always have to remember that the rules are different in different environments. What I explained to you during the previous 2.5 hours, almost 3. So. Just a second. I really, because it's a pain for me. I'm pretty sure you cannot split a 16-core Windows. There is no 16-core Windows Server license. There is no such thing. There is no 16-core Windows Server license. There are only single-core licenses. That's it. There are no 2-core licenses. There are no 8-core licenses. There are no 16-core licenses. There are single-core licenses. Sorry, but it's a pain for me. I keep explaining this. So inventory. sorry to digress. If you have a SAM tool, use it. Obviously, you have Snow, use it. You have Flexera, use it. You have Uzu, Aspera, use it. If you don't have a tool, but you still want to do an assessment, Microsoft Assessment and Planning Toolkit is still available, funny enough. I mean, Microsoft deleted it and then put it back around 1st of February this year. I hope they won't delete it soon. It actually can also inventory VMware because you need virtualization information. You remember that licensing in virtual infrastructure must be assigned to hosts, so you need to know where your VMs reside. You need that information. But you may also use RVTools, which is another free tool for VMware. These two tools in combination are completely free. SCCM data isn't good enough unless you specifically tune it. There are people I know, and they come to my lives that know how to tune. They know how to tune SCCM in a way when it returns SQL Server editions, for example. By all means, if you can do that, do that. But if you have an out-of-the-box system sensor configuration manager installation, that inventory is rubbish. You have to fine-tune it. And there's a lot of noise. And there won't be SQL Server editions, as I said. So SCCM isn't good enough. MAP is much better. So my practical advice is I usually ask my customers that have no tools to do two things. Give me an SCCM extract for clients, because there you don't need that much information around physical clients, around virtualization and specific core configurations, where you can basically leave with the data that comes from SCCM. But for all the servers, I insist that they run MAP a few times until we get to about 98-100% coverage. So that is my go-to combination, because MAP requires computers to be turned on, so it won't work with clients as well, especially when people work from home. You can't scan something that is off or off the network. But this is my go-to combination. What else? And that's basically it. And then you just compare. You apply all the rules, all the calculations. You calculate how many slices you require. Not a simple one-to-one with all the caveats, with all the rules. And you do your self-assessment, and then you look at the numbers and think, okay, so this we need to buy, this we can use in Azure, and we'll get to that as well. So the last question of today, is it? Yes, it is. You have an enterprise agreement and MPSA, and even some CSP licenses. You've just received an MLS. Where do you look up your entitlement summary? The totals of all the licenses that you have. A, license summary tab on the MLS. B, license summary plus calculate yourself MPSA. And C, it's a complex manual calculation. And meanwhile, where is this taken from? Let me please remind you that the only source of information about Microsoft licensing that you should trust is Microsoft product terms. Microsoft product terms has only one type of Windows Server core license. It's a single core license. Microsoft product terms only says how many cores, single cores, you need to assign to a server, not packs. Packs are nowhere in product terms. A pack is not a license. A pack, as I showed you, it's a package. This is a pack of licenses. This is a single license. You buy it like this, but this is your single license. Please. Please. Even, you know what? If you have MPSA transactions, look up MPSA transactions, the 16 core packs. You know what it says in the transaction, on the MPSA, in the Business Center? It says 16 licenses. It just says that. Explicitly just says 16 licenses. Not 16, not one license for 16 cores. It says 16 single core licenses. In MPSA transactions, clearly from Microsoft. I'm not making this up. It's C, actually, yeah. On this slide, it's C. It's a complex manual calculation. Srinivas, with all due respect, I'm not trying to insult you anyhow. So please forgive me if it sounds like that. you're still saying 16-core license. There is no 16-core license. There is no 16-core license. There are 16 licenses, single-core licenses in a single path. It's very important. Because then what you end up doing is you're overpaying. Or somebody comes to you and says, no, you can't break it. And you have to pay more when you don't have to. It's your cost saving. Be careful with these terms. People are being deceived like that on multiple fronts. Like they have to buy extra licenses because they were told this. I even have an idea actually to publish a book which will be an encyclopedia of licensing bullshit and put it on Amazon with all these stories that I sometimes emotionally post on my channel. Oh, I just can't keep calm about it. I'm very sorry. If Pax on there, who do what licensing guides? Please show me that licensing guide. Is it from Microsoft? Is it in product terms? If it's a blog post or if it's somebody's internal licensing guide, some unofficial licensing guide, look up in product terms. Don't even trust me what I'm telling you right now. Look up product terms. I'm not making this up. I had it researched. Spent a lot of time on it. Never trust the license summary tab. You should do a manual calc. Yes, you should go to the transaction data tab and recheck it, because even on the transaction data, Microsoft make mistakes as well. Actually, I don't want to do that. But if I wanted to, just on the MLS file itself, it will be a 3-hour training at least about all the things. If server has 20 core, then required 1 pack of 16 cores plus 2 pack of 2 cores. That's the correct wording. 1 pack of 16 cores plus 2 packs of 16, not one 16-core license. Thank you, Manish. Thank you for this. How to do metering for the license? What do you mean usage? Do you mean usage metering? Please comment, and then I'll. Floris, yeah, we had this discussion with Floris Clave from License Q, as I call them, friendly competitors. They have their own channel on YouTube as well, and they have an interesting client-only session on the 10th. Floris, isn't it? On the 10th, and in 6 days about CSP price transparency. Good subject. So, what Floris told me is that in his days in Microsoft, I know, sorry for just disclosing this, he just told his customers, don't buy 16-core packs, so you avoid this whole discussion. Buy 2-core packs and forget about this. It's not to me, it's not a gray area, but there's so much misconception there. This message mostly comes from people selling licenses because they want to sell you more. It's a dodgy tactic. I don't like that. Yeah, wonderful. What is that? What is that from? Wonderful, really good. Each license may be assigned to separate physical server. Thanks, Floris. I appreciate you supporting me. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, Halima, please send me the links. I'd like to read it. I'll explode about it. Okay, so the Floris section is on the session on the 18th, which is great. Well, it's in 1 week. Wednesday the 18th. So the 11th, not 18th. 11th. Why did you say 18th? Does anyone have any more questions? Because we've overrun by 2 minutes. If you have any more questions, if I don't answer them now, I know usually when I close this stream, there's a flurry of kind of thank yous and also questions. I will probably see them myself personally. What did I want to say? If there's any suggestion you have, so firstly the announcement again, just to remind you, 18th of August, Microsoft agreements in 2 weeks, and just call to action. Ask your questions. Come to my LinkedIn comments. Come to the events page. Make suggestions. If you're unhappy about something, tell us about exactly what you're unhappy. Many of you I know are unhappy with the Eventbrite registration. We're going to fix that. Please like this video on YouTube, because what happens is whether you like, or even if you dislike, click dislike, please, because then YouTube shows it to other people. It's really helpful. Likes and dislikes as well. And I'll be honest, if you dislike it, it's been a long session, and I don't have a very good accent either. Russian, living in England. And invite a friend to the next session, which will talk about agreements. So we'll try to keep those other sessions as simple as possible to understand. I don't think I succeeded today very much to keep this session possible. I just don't know how to simplify it even further. But I hope you understood at least half of it, because it will still give you a very good foundation to understand Microsoft licensing. And please come to the other 7 sessions. You'll find the calendar in LinkedIn. All the links and all the comments are in the description under this video. Everything, basically, answering all the questions. What's going to be in the training? Is it free? Do you need to register? It's all there. It's actually there. And I'll keep posting it because people keep asking. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Safe with knowledge of Microsoft licensing. Learn Microsoft licensing. Progress in your SAM career. Network. Communicate. Talk to each other. If you have a problem, come to me. I have a company helping with these things. And some companies I just help for free when it's a simple question or something that doesn't require me to do like a long research. Then I help. Have a good couple of weeks. I might see you with a different kinds of session in a few days, which will not be related to this training. That's not yet decided. It's a bit of a short notice, but nevertheless. Thank you, everybody. Amazing. So thank you for all your things. I do appreciate it. It's very lively today. I must say, by the way, the majority of the answers that were given to you to my questions were spot on. Vast majority, if you were watching the chat as well. Vast majority. Very, very good audience. Very understanding audience. And if you're shy to ask anything publicly, come to my comments. Come to my DMs on LinkedIn. So what was this question? Sorry, I skipped through it. A few words about the nature of the final exam, perhaps. Does it have an exam name and number? No, it's not official. So sorry if that was not clear. Microsoft canceled official exams completely, as far as I know, around licensing, because they're not rewarded on licensing anymore. So if you want to learn Microsoft official stuff, learn Azure. That's what you need to do. All you can do right now is either do, which you could do tomorrow or now, get licensing ready tests, or our exam, which is not official. It's not a Microsoft licensing test. It's a Microsoft license management test. We did that on purpose, that it's a license management test. But I promise you it's going to be tough. I promise it's going to be very, very tough. When I have planned for this. Yes, I'm sorry, Carl. Yeah, it was. It's a fortnightly. I thought I'm shouting out loud about it. It's a fortnightly session. Again, here's the link to the calendar file. I'm typing it in chat. You'll see it in chat soon. Elaborate URL, so I have to be careful with how I type it. Some expert. Can you see it? Is this samexpert.com/samexpert? Sorry, I typed. There's a typo. It must be samexpert training, so double T, 2021.ics. Thanks, everybody. And see you in a couple of weeks, and online anytime. Goodbye.